dreaming anyway.
So many people just talk, and
How
never...
does it feel to be powerless?
This is about your damn pride, Tina.
I know I'm not real. At least not according to your definition.
I know damn well I do.
It's just... There was nothing I could do.
This isn't happening. But then again,
This just isn't happening.
what is reality anyway?
Selfish fool!
Hello everyone, how are you all doing today? Kotho, what was that intro? That intro was two things at once. Firstly, it was a cry for help, and secondly, it was the sign above the gates of hell saying, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." Things will only get worse from here, because today we're talking about Enderal, which is actually a mod I have covered before on this channel. Let's look back on that video real quick. It is my belief that living in a world plagued with a dangerous disease and where the prospect of war, chaos and death looms ever closer is an experience we can all relate to. So, in a sense, this game has a little something for everyone. We've come a long way, Not too long of a way, but at least I upped the budget this time. Covering Enderal is admittedly a bit of a challenge. Calling Enderal a mod is almost like calling rice cereal. I mean, yeah it is, but are you really gonna call it that? No, Enderal is a completely different game that just happened to be made in the Skyrim engine. This tradition goes as back as Morrowind actually. Sure AI has been making complete conversion mods for Elder Scrolls games since 2007. Enderal is just the tip of the iceberg. We have a lot to talk about today, and this video will not just cover Enderal, but it will also mention what happened in Arctwent and Nehrimese as well, in hopes of explaining this wretched plot. I will also have to add some more context about the world this franchise is set in before we get into the story of Enderal, and on top of even that, Enderal isn't exactly shy about its use and borrowing of different philosophical and psychoanalytical ideas to tell the story it wants to tell, so every now and again I'm gonna have to pause and elaborate. And if you thought me pausing to explain test lore was a bit over, then I have to tell you that this is that times 10 plus nitro speed. Enderal's lore is a subject of countless debates that continue on to this very day, and that is because it is a very well written mod that utilizes a lot of different schools of thought to create its story, and the story itself is left purposefully vague in some aspects, specifically because it is meant to keep you scratching your head over it. As is the case with many of the videos I make, I might overanalyze a thing or two. I am pretty confident that, should a writer for this mod story be unfortunate enough to stumble across this video, they will be left thinking to themselves, what is the little bro talking about? The open-endedness and vagueness of this mod has allowed many people to create their own headcanon and theories about the story, and I'm gonna pull onto them, because for me, this is my redemption arc. This channel's non-white TP videos were originally made to explain confusing video games with references to real-life works, and I'm here to do this just right. Or at least I hope I am. That being said, I will also try to avoid talking about the more obvious references this mod borrows from. You don't need me to tell you what is a reference to a blue and red pill dilemma, or the fact that every time we're talking about a chaotic society emerging from humanity killing its own gods, Nietzsche is sitting in a corner in heaven twirling his mustache going, yes, I did it, I called it, all of it. It was me, I said this would happen. And with all those disclaimers out of the way, let's talk about the world Enderal is set in. Firstly, we have to talk about the fundamental principles that the world of Enderal is set in. The sea of eventualities. Basically, everything that can happen, does happen, in some other plane of existence. This is how magic in this world works. An arcanist is someone who is able to see through different eventualities and manifest aspects of them in his current dimension. That fireball you just casted? Yeah, somewhere out there is a version of your hand that is on fire. That healing spell you just casted? Somewhere out there is a version of you that is healthy. That familiar you just summoned? Somewhere out there is a version of you where this is your pet, and you brought it here now.
Imagine the following scenario. You're in an old fortress. Suddenly a door opens and a bandit charges in. Before you even realize what is happening, he raises his bow, nocks an arrow, and fires it straight at your throat. What happens next? Reality branches off into millions of new realities. One in which the bandit kills you, one in which he gets hit by a falling piece of rubble from the ceiling, one in which a tunnel spider jumps out from the shadows and kills him. The possibilities are endless. Everything that can happen will happen, and creates a new eventuality in the process, another reality.
This is referred to as the Sea of Eventualities, and within that sea, at first there was nothing. Then something happened that broke the nothing. What happened that broke the nothing? This subject will be discussed at a later time. After the creation of the world, a number of civilizations keep mysteriously rising and falling. We don't know why they keep collapsing, yet from their ashes, life rises up again, in one way or another. In this particular time, for instance, a magical anomaly occurred which created a guy named Asataron. He then created a bunch of other organisms that resembled him, some more so than others. The ones that resembled him the most were a race that would come to be known as the Eterna, and they would go on to create the first civilization. They would also spread throughout the land, which back then was just one massive continent known as Pangora, and for a time they would even prosper. At this point, I have to make you aware that, much like the Elder Scrolls, there is a lot of unreliable narration in this universe as well. In Nehrim, which is the prequel to Enderal, there is a book called Vague Traditions of the Eterna. The book describes how Asataron and the Eterna are essentially a race of aliens stranded here on Ven, and then they had a battle with the Starlings here, and after said battle they have been stuck here since. This is, for many reasons, and a lot of whom we will actually get to, complete nonsense. Something that Enderal's story does different than Skyrim's or Elder Scrolls in general. Whenever there is a source being unreliable or false, there is always a hint or clue suggesting that something is sus. The takeaway from this story is that at some point Asataron went insane, which led to a civil war, and the outcome of the war really doesn't matter because an event known as the Starfall happened. During the time of the Starfall, a bunch of meteors kept falling from the sky. This led to a bunch of disasters, and Pangora even broke apart into several smaller continents because of the immense force of the landing of the meteors. Where the Starfall ends, the Second Age begins, which is the age that Enderal takes place in. Another thing that happened during the Starfall is the emergence of the Starlings. They were reported to come out of the remnants of the meteors that kept hitting Pangora. They also have a strange nostalgic longing to return to their ancient homeland that, according to them, lies somewhere in the sky, and to that end, they have dedicated their lives to creating different technological advancements so that one day they may go back to their lost homeland. The extinction of Asataron and most of the Eternal civilization is followed up by 4 millennia of different people fighting each other for power across the newly formed continents. During this time, and due to the geological isolation created by the split, different races with different cultures emerged, and this was the way of life in Ven until the year 3987 of the Second Age. On that year, 7 arcanists gained immortality through their immense power and understanding of magic, and then they proclaimed themselves as gods. They would be known as the Lightborn. These are, in no particular order, Dir, who was called the creator and ruled over Arctwent, Erodan, who ruled Nehrim, Saldrin, who ruled over Kira, Esara, who ruled Inodan, Malphas, who ruled Enderal, Irlanda, who ruled Araziel, and Morala, who ruled the domains of Kilei. They then began ruling and creating stability throughout the land, which lasted for about 4 millennia. However, they ruled over with an iron fist. They had a lot of different military and government bodies that essentially did their bidding, and one of these factions was the Seraphs. Enter the plot of Arctwent. This one is a bit confusing and not very important for the purposes of this video. All you need to know is that there is this Seraph named Arct who was initially very faithful to the Lightborn, but eventually he grew to despise them and wanted to lead an army against them in Arctwent in the year 8202 of the Second Age. He failed in this endeavor, but he doesn't leave the picture just yet. For the time being, he's just banished. Some years later, in the year 8231 of the Second Age, the events of Nehrim kick in. See, there have been revolutionary tendencies in Nehrim for a while, as the Lightborn demand all people who are able to cast magic to undergo training and basically pledge allegiance to them, but a growing number of mages have begun rejecting those demands, and those mages have now formed their own order, with the aim of overthrowing the Lightborn. The main character of Nehrim joins this order, and throughout the main quest, he saves another important character, Narazul Aranthiel. This guy is a big deal. He's the son of Tilor Aranthiel, who is the Grandmaster of the Order of the Lightborn, which is basically an organization dedicated to protecting them. He was friends with Arct, but after a little bit of a love affair turned bloody, they now hate each other, despite having virtually the exact same goal, which is to overthrow the Lightborn, and he was already in prison for killing the Lightborn Erodan who ruled over Nehrim. Now I have to explain the concept of predestination. In this universe, everything is set to play out in exactly one way. We will learn later what that way exactly entails, but it is essentially in understanding the plot of Nehrim right now, because it is predestined that some people known as the Shadowborn would eventually rise up and kill the Lightborn. Narazul and Arct, despite both really hating each other, both want to become Shadowborn so they can kill the Lightborn. However, it is revealed that Narazul cannot become a Shadowborn because his mother is actually the Lightborn Irlanda, meaning he has their blood. Arct says, okay, if you can kill the gods, there is no use in having you around, and then kills him. And then it is actually Arct and the player character who gain the title of Shadowborn and kill the remaining gods. However, this is where things get really interesting. See, the Shadowborn aren't meant to rule or even live beyond the point after killing the Lightborn, because it is simply predestined to be that way. Their only purpose is to get rid of the Lightborn so the next phase of predestination can commence. However, the player character of Nehrim is able to overcome predestination, and in that effort, he even destroys it. And so now, when the Messenger of Fate Sarantha comes by and tries to kill the Shadowborn, she is defeated because predestination is no longer valid. By abolishing predestination, however, the Shadowborn also abolished the very force that made them the Shadowborn to begin with. As remember, predestination works as a force that says that things must happen in a certain way. So after this point, they are essentially essentially out of the picture. Thus, everything so far continues to play out as if predestination still applied, as the very purpose of predestination up until this point was to kill the Lightborn and get rid of the Shadowborn, and that still happened, but beyond this point, and for whatever predestination has in store next, all bets are off, and 2 years after this, the events of Enderal begin. Before we start talking about the plot of Enderal, I feel the need to introduce our races and give a bit more background to them. Eterna. They're the closest race to Asadharon, and their homeland used to be Nyanaranath. I say used to because a rebellion occurred there, led by an Eterna named Zoras, who claimed to be a reincarnation of Asadharon, but turns out he wasn't. The rebellion was brutally repressed and the land destroyed. Many Eterna migrated in different continents, while others chose to live a nomadic lifestyle in clans. Arazilians, humans from Arazel. The land is divided into the civilized coastal areas and the nomadic people that live in the steppes. The civilized part of their race gets a bad rep because of the uncivilized part, and they constantly strive for recognition as equals amongst the rest of the civilized world. Kileians, human race that inhabits the belt of Kile. They own the Blue Island Coalition, which is basically the in-game equivalent of the Dutch East India Company. Kyrenian, humans from Kira. They mostly live in circles, which is basically polyamorous families that can raise children together and include both men and women. Their society is composed of a lot of artists and philosophers, and they are ruled by the Golden Queen, which lives in a golden palace. The immense economical inequality there, combined with the fact that every third person there is a philosopher, has made this place a bit of a hotspot for revolutions, revolts, rebellions, and everything in between, which has led to a lot of atrocities being committed there. That shouldn't come up for us here in Enderal though, I think.
You have made this mistake before, Tilor, back then in Kira.
Nehrimese. After the death of the Lightborn and the loss of the power of the Shadowborn, the people of Nehrim have once again fallen into a huge civil war. The war has recently ended, however, and the winners are a bunch of Redditors by the name of the Free People of Nehrim, whose leader is the man with the most karma by the name of Korak. They now hate religion and want to see it abolished. Religiously so, might I add. Enderalians. The people of Enderal live relatively secluded from the rest of the world, as trade with the outside has been reduced to a minimum, and all information passed down on them comes after it has been approved by the Holy Order, which, as we remember, is the order that was sworn to protect the Lightborn. Naturally, such an order has no interest in the news that the gods are dead, and so they have managed to keep that fact hidden for the better part of 2 years. People who proclaim the death of the Lightborn are usually laughed at or shunned as fools. The order has complete control of Enderal, with the only notable part escaping their authority being the Undercity, which is led by the Rhalata. And lastly, Starlings. We already talked about them, so here's a quick recap. People who come from meteor showers who live as inventors because they want to go back to their lost homeland in the stars. However, most of their knowledge about their location, purpose, or even appearance of their homeland escapes them. For some reason, they can't seem to remember anything about it. They only have vague recollections about the teachings of their old fathers that inhabited their land, and with the help of that knowledge, they constantly try to get back there. And with all that out of the way, let's finally talk about Enderal. Enderal begins here, on a beautiful summer day, on a lovely hill. It looks calm, and it is. But if you look around you a bit, this place is pretty weird. If you look on the right corner behind you, you can find 3 people burning at the stake. There is also a note under the statue of an angel, which reads, "O Lord, O Maker, I hear your calling. I feel your love. I know about your sacrifice. Without you, I am nothing. A twig on the current of time. A ship without shepherd. Free me from my vices and forgive me my trespasses. Forgive too my wife and my child. Deliver me from my pains and bless us with your everlasting mercy." At the top of the hill, we find our father.
Oh, hey there. I didn't see you coming. So, how did it go? Did you find it? Where are we? We're at home, silly. Where else would we be? Just mommy, sister, you and me. Now tell me, how did it go? Did you find it?
No, I didn't.
No? Pity. Maybe you're simply looking in the wrong places. Did you ever think of that? Oh well, who knows. Say, why don't you go inside and see if you can help Mommy with the cooking? The Creator was kind to us today and sent a big fat elk right in front of my bow. All right?
The house is also certainly weird. A lot of meat and locked doors everywhere. Where is Mom and Sister?
What? Now would you look at that? I totally forgot about them. They're dead, don't you remember? You murdered them back then, both of them. But hey, no use crying over spilled milk, right? At least this means there's more meat for the 2 of us. You still remember how to do this, right? First, off with the skin. Slice up the belly, then out with the entrails. I'll look for a nice sharp knife in the meantime, to cut off the head. I don't think either of us wants to eat that, do we?
But I didn't kill them, it was the masked men from the temple.
Oh, silly, what's this again? We both know that's a lie. You did it. I remember it all. First, you set this horrible fire to your sister's crib. She screamed and screamed, and Mommy heard it, but when she finally got there, nothing was left of her but burnt flesh. And, oh gosh, do we really need to go through this again? You know how sad it makes me when you do this. You killed them, period. No matter how often you tell me you didn't, it changes nothing. You hear me? Nothing. Now please, let's start cooking. I'm so bloody damn hungry.
But I didn't kill them, it was the masked men from the temple.
Oh, by the Creator's name, why are you telling these lies? Isn't it enough that you murdered us? Do you really have to bother me over and over with your stupid, pathetic, and pointless whining? You know, sometimes I wish the Creator would have made me just a little less merciful. Just a little less pious. Because then I would have realized that you were tainted by sin long before any of this had ever happened. And instead of raising you, feeding you, and loving you like a father does, I would have put you in the horse trough right after you were born. Yes, I should have killed you. I should have just killed you. Just like you killed us. And now, you think you're safe because we're all under the earth, don't you? Well, listen up, my child. You are wrong. And do you know why? Because the dead don't forget. Do you hear me? The dead don't forget. Now enough of this useless chatter. I'm bloody starving. Bring me the meat, you spoiled brat. Bring it to me. Bring me a nice crisp piece of meat. 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 Bring me a nice crisp piece of meat.
So this was something. There's a lot we have to dissect to make sense of that intro, and I will do just that in due time. The intro cinematic that is shown after this event gives us a quick recap of all the stuff that happened in Nehrim, and then hints at something greater happening now that the Lightborn are dead, before concluding by saying this.
This is the story of someone who wanted to be free.
We then wake up in a dream after our friend tells us we had another nightmare. Yep, this whole daddy section was just a dream. We are then given the opportunity to make our character, and then we have to beat up 2 other people from the ship. Turns out, we are intruders in the ship who entered illegally with the hopes of staying locked in the bottom of the vessel until we reach Enderal in hopes of escaping the civil wars in Nehrim. After we take out the 2 other crewmates, we are stopped by a mysterious veiled woman.
Poor lost souls. The probabilities have turned against you.
Mother, who are you?
You are confused by my sudden appearance. But my identity is irrelevant, as are you, dear Sirius. Unfortunately.
What? Oh shit, please don't tell anyone we're down here, please. We didn't mean any harm. These guys were just...
You ask that I not reveal you, for your intentions were not evil. And I believe you, but sadly, it's not compassion that rules my deeds. The first beat of a wing must happen. It is the only way the probabilities will fall into place. This is the way it has to be. The way it has been for eons. I am sorry.
What the? Oh no! No! What are you doing? Please! Please don't leave! We just wanted to...
She knocks us out and we wake up in front of the captain, who probably ties us down and throws us into the bottom of the sea. Now, the Veiled Woman is one of the most essential characters in this mod, and she's also the most enigmatic one. For one, she can teleport everywhere she wants, she is immortal and has the power to basically do whatever she wants, and she also seems to have an understanding of the events that would transpire in the future. We will get back to her later. At the bottom of the sea, we get a foreshadowing montage, and then we wake up in the coast of Enderal, right next to a forgotten temple. With nothing else to do, we get in the temple, where we can find a bunch of weird machines. But other than that, this is pretty unassuming for now, getting out of the temple, and we can talk about the actual gameplay of Enderal. First of all, fast traveling using a map? Nope. Forget about it. You will either have to buy a teleport scroll to certain areas, or ride one of these things, but they only go on very specific locations. Skyrim leveling is also a thing of the past. Gone are the days where you can just spam daggers to level up fast. If you want to level up here, you have to actually do stuff. I know, it's shocking. Experiencing new places, killing things, completing quests, finding collectibles, lockpicking, all these activities get you XP. Once you level up, you can enter a realm of meditation, which allows you to use your points to unlock buffs from skill trees. You gain a point per level, and when you reach the peak of 2 different skill trees, you get to pick a secondary class. Pretty neat. Every level also gives you some learning points as well, which you can use to consume books to level up your skills directly. The more you know of a skill, the more advanced books you will need to level it up beyond a point. Advice: no matter what class you choose, Rhetoric is a must level up. Unlike other RPGs where Rhetoric is basically better prices and a free pancake every now and again, here Rhetoric gives you more XP, more options when it comes to many tasks, and more information about the world around you. Of course, you do still get better prices. Oh, would you look at that? That book is slightly too expensive for my budget. Well, let me put on my finest, slickest attire to get a discount. Speaking of levels, the war no longer scales with the level of the player, meaning that certain areas have different level requirements. The higher level requirement in area is usually means you'll have better loot. It's like a classic MMORPG. MMORPG, if you prefer. You begin in the starting area and then you progress to way higher level areas as you go. I heard it being said that this system is actually better than Skyrim's. What is my opinion on this? Well, yes, it is better than Skyrim's, but not because it is inherently better than Skyrim's. Rather, it is better than Skyrim's precisely because it's different. I ask all of you, how many times have you played Skyrim by this point? We have now reached the point where it is common practice to proactively avoid going down certain roads at the beginning of the game because we know where the strong early game bears and trolls are. Anything different would be viewed positively, courtesy of it being different. Would you like to be told that you can't go to Solitude yet because the bandits around the area are too high of a level for you and that you should stick to Whiterun instead? I don't think you would, but Enderal is specifically made to accommodate such a system. Moving on. Your HP no longer regenerates after battle. You are gonna have to eat now. All those blocks of cheese you have been hoarding in your inventory just so you can dump them in your house? Yeah, they are essential now. Just remember to eat them fast enough because they expire. Moving down the road, we can talk to Apothecary. There are special dialogue options in this mod. Choosing them gives you some more world building. They also grant you some EXP. If you select 10 different of them, they will also grant you a flat increase in all your stats. Turns out, the Society of Enderal is divided into people that follow different, oftentimes hereditary, paths.
I walk the path of the Erudites. And there's also the Manufacturers, the Sublimes, and, of course, the Pathless. Within these roles, we are free to choose a profession, but certain vocations that are available to an erudite are not permitted to a manufacturer, which is one path below. However, below does not mean that it is in any way inferior. Everyone on Enderal does what they do best, and who would know better than the gods what exactly that is?
Who are the Pathless?
Men or women who have never received the path consecration, or those who have broken their path. Brigands, glimmer dust smugglers, murderers, well, you know.
As we try to leave, this happens.
By the righteous path? What happened to you? You look as if you've met the Black Guardian himself.
I feel like I've got some kind of fever. Any idea what it could be?
Fever? Well, there could be many causes. Wait a moment. I think I still have some grunt root. That should be enough to ease your pain, at least for now. Take a seat at the fire. The warmth might help you.
So they try to brew some potion, and then this happens.
Explode. Do something, damn it! Do something! Oh no! Oh, sod it!
When we call them out on what we just saw, they seem oblivious to it, until it happens for real.
What the? Carbos!
They've hit me, Finn. Those bastards have hit me.
Carbos, do something, damn it! Do
We are fortunately saved by the main supporting character for this mod, Butcher of Ark. What do you know about my fever?
Quite a lot, actually. You're suffering from Arcanist's fever. Honestly, I'm surprised the old apothecarius didn't see that. Let me guess, you're suddenly capable of doing things you previously knew only from the bard songs, right? You're unusually strong, you have reflexes like a cat, and drinking potions or any kind of magically infused substance leaves a bitter afterglow in your head. Well then, congratulations. Your magical talent just blossomed. A bit late, given your age, but it happens.
Magic in this mod is balanced by the arcane fever system. No more spamming healing potions or healing spells, and high-level areas with magical contamination need extra preparation to be navigated through safely. The only thing that can calm it down is ambrosia. It drops the fever by 20%, and the game is quite generous by throwing it around actually, so it's not too bad. The fever is the product of your body not being able to handle the fact that it can tap into the sea of eventualities, which, as we established, is the source of magic in this world. If you don't control the fever, you get a debuff, and if you keep ignoring it, you die. Or worse, you turn into one of these. That's right, you turn into a liberal. Yet Jaspa seems quite puzzled with this whole vision thing, and the fact that our fever developed quickly and not gradually as it often does. So he volunteers to help us if we first help him with an important matter, the case of Yero.
15 years have passed since my last letter. Sira and I now live together in a small house in Ark. It's been 5 years since I undertook the holy trial, but despite what I thought, I did not join the military wing of the Order. Instead, I became a magister. Why? Because the children I teach will shape the future of this world, and because there is enough bloodshed already. 2 weeks ago, the Trinchessa approved Sira's concept of the food bank. It obliges every wealthy citizen of Ark to pay a handful of pennies to the Order, with which the Order will provide a warm meal for the Undercity dwellers once a week. Their reactions embittered me. The decree does not ask for much, yet they protested as though we threatened to take their homes. I will never understand people like them. As sad as this may sound, I am happy. My life provides me with a feeling of purpose, and I still have Sira at my side after all these years. It is strange, even though I know you will never read these lines, it almost feels as if through them I can speak to you. Sira, I love you.
So at this time in Enderal, there is a disease making the rounds called the Red Madness. It has the ability to turn seemingly normal people into complete madmen who commit horrible actions like setting buildings on fire and killing others and themselves. What is interesting is that people with this illness are reported to have glowed eyes and yell what seems to be complete mad talk, like things about light and death and fire, and perhaps even crispy pieces of meat if the situation was right, I guess. But it's not only the people that can be afflicted with this disease, and it has also risen the undead and made wild animals hostile towards basically anything moving. Yet things like the origins, the spreading method, and even the way it exactly affects people remains an enigma to everyone. So now we head to Riverville, which is basically the starter village, to talk to one of Yero's childhood friends to learn if there is anything fishy about this Yero character that may have led to him contracting the disease. His friend says that his mother was assaulted when he was still a boy, and his father was a fisherman who was overcome by grief and eventually alcoholism. Despite that, Yero changed seemingly for the better after this incident. He began talking about his grand plans and about how he wanted to make a change in the world. Eventually, it was even discovered that he had a glimmer of magical talent inside him, and so he was taken to the temple by the Order so he can cultivate his skills. His friend also said that he always expected that something like this would happen.
Oh, it's hard to explain. I believe it was the way he was talking about his grand plans. How he wanted to make the world a better place, to become the greatest keeper since Loram Waterblade. Underneath all this, there was an anger. An anger mixed with deep grief and disappointment. I don't think he was aware of it because he drew all his strength from that anger. The strength to do all this, to learn and to work day and night, but it frightened me like the Blue Death. It slumbers inside the pathless mage who believes he can master magic without the Order's help. At first, it grants power, but then, one day, it bursts out in an unholy wave of destruction, turning him into one of the monsters in the old songs.
After that, we find his diaries at the bottom of the sea, alongside a very important key, which will be discussed at a later point.
Seige is dead, killed by 2 Undercity dwellers as she helped prepare the food bank. How swiftly these words are written, yet how can I even remotely begin to express this pain, this void? Seige always said it helps to write, yet it doesn't. I sit here watching the ink dry and the letters form the words of a stranger in my own body. I am a stranger when I wake up in the morning. I am a stranger when the sun sets at dusk. I am a stranger when I lie in bed at night. The path condemns suicide as a crime because we all have a purpose in this world. But what is mine? I look ahead and I see 30 winters of solitude. I look back and I see nothing but a trail of broken dreams. Our food bank caused brawls and murder in the Undercity. The rich forced the Trachessa to revoke the decree. So tell me, Malphas, is this my purpose? To fail? My thoughts are chaos and I'm too tired to continue writing.
Then we got a major spot in Yero's family home. After we break a log, we find the corpse of Sarah and learn that keeping corpses in Enderal is essentially illegal, and all the bodies of commoners have to be burned. Religiously, this is done so that the body can pass on to the afterlife. Practically, it is used to stop plagues, corpse overcrowding, and undead from rising.
Beloved Seige, this is my last letter. In it, I ask for forgiveness, for it was I who murdered you. No, of course, it wasn't me who held the knife, but it was me who infected you with my fallacy. The fallacy that the world wants to be saved. It doesn't. Yes, Seige, there's still a part of me who refuses to believe these words even as I write them, but just one look is enough to prove me a fool. We have so much, yet we are never content. We could make peace, yet we choose war. We embrace hatred over love. And no, Seige, there is no hope, no silver lining, no matter how much we try to tell ourselves the opposite. Mankind is at its end. It has been since some mad god created it for his amusement. A Quiranian philosopher once said that there comes a time in our lives when we make a choice to live virtuously yet in austerity, or ignobly yet in pleasure. The philosopher called this second choice choosing the void, because this is what lurks behind its pretty face. Do you see it now, Seige? The bitter truth? They all chose the void, all but us. We who dreamed of something bigger. We who were willing to make a sacrifice for the greater good. Just imagine what we could have done if we hadn't been alone. But we were alone from the very beginning. We should have fled to a faraway isle to grow old together. But we didn't. And why? Because I corrupted you with my delusions. I too will go, Seige. I don't think there is life after death, and I do not care. But before I make my exit, I will give this world what it deserves. Do you remember? They all chose the void. They shall have it.
With this, we know what Yeros' motive was for the attack, yet that still doesn't explain how he got the Red Madness. But with that, we head back to the inn in Riverville and start our journey to Ark. Before we get to Ark, I want to explain a few things that have come up but I haven't talked about, or obvious things that need to be said. First of all, the Red Madness isn't real. It only infects desperate people, beings that have a weak consciousness such as animals and the undead, or more importantly, humans that have grown disillusioned with the world around them. Secondly, before we move on, I want to talk about the Butcher of Ark. See, after we talk with Jaspar for the first time, we find a book behind him called The Butcher of Ark. It's the first in a long series of books detailing the life of one Joel Tannerson, as he went from being a priest to becoming a serial killer working for an organization known as the Black Libra. These books are essential in understanding what is happening in this mod, especially as we get to some of the later quests. So I want to talk about them right now. Now, I'm not gonna read all the books, I'm just gonna summarize it. But before I summarize it, I need to say that this is an extremely well written book, and it is very much worth reading. Alternatively, you can listen to an audiobook version, which I will add in the description. So The Butcher of Ark is Tannerson's autobiography, and it begins by stating that he was an orphan found under the statue of Malphas, and was adopted by, well, a tanner. When he grew up, he became a priest of the Lightborn, and one seemingly random night, he saw a veiled woman in his dreams. The woman tells him that if he doesn't leave the town right now and follow the fire, he will die. So he does just that, and on the road he stops in an inn where two nobles from Ark begin to bully him. He tries to get back on them by poisoning their horses, but he's found out and he kills one of them. He himself is unable to describe exactly what he felt when he was taking a man's life for the first time, but the guilt he would have felt was overshadowed by an extreme feeling of euphoria, and he even discovered that he has the ability to see people's lives flashing before his eyes at the moment of killing them. His eyes also start glowing red, but despite what you might be led to think, this isn't the red madness. Rather, this is the fire. Just as he was doing that, he was discovered by a character we all better remember, Calia. Calia is described as basically a monster, both physically and mentally. He is a member of the Black Libra, he also has the fire inside him, and he is essentially either superhuman or flat out immortal. There is this moment where Calia takes Tannerson to a brothel, and he pays for two drugged prostitutes, and Tannerson is absolutely furious by this, because he still has some ethics left in him, and he even attempts to choke Calia, to which he simply just laughs. He's also described as having inhuman power, and he can also exist almost without any sleep. He is a monster, and his life's work is serving the Black Libra. The Black Libra is an organization older than the Lightborn, and they aren't exactly an organization in the regular sense. Rather, they receive cryptic commands that come from a holy child's dreams. Their dreams of the child are then turned into commands by the priests of the Libra, who then interpret them and give them as orders to be executed. Their philosophy, if you can call it that, is that the sins the child sees in his dreams are beyond redemption, as apparently they have been overcome by demons, and for that, they must die. Now here's the interesting part. The Libra doesn't just kill people who have sinned, it also sees evil in its inception, and thus gives commands for the execution of people who haven't done anything wrong yet. For one to become a member of the Libra, they must enter a room full of paintings in an abandoned temple and kill themselves there, and thus rise again as servants of the Libra. The room of paintings is a very interesting place. It shows the person in it throughout different stages of their lives, and in all of whom they wear different masks, and as we reach the present, those masks become more and more ornate. But in that final picture, they are shown taking their own lives inside the room of paintings, which is basically them offering themselves to the Libra. And that is exactly what Tannerson did. After that, he and Calia begin to drift further apart, as Calia is essentially Tannerson's teacher, and he has taught him everything he has to know to become a killer of the Libra. And this is exactly what happens for the next few months. Tannerson will receive a letter from them, kill the target, and feel the fire pulsing through him while doing it. Until one day he was tasked with killing a young nobleman who killed a whore, but while carrying out the deed, he realized something for the first time. This person did not protest his death, nor did he appear openly malicious or possessed by some kind of demon, as the Libra said. Rather, he was a mentally ill man who was constantly abused by his father as a child, and now was taking it out on the world around him. And it was at that moment that Tannerson realized that there was no demons in people's heads, nor was anyone ever possessed. It was simply a game of cause and effect, and the Libra had no right to pass judgment on people or brand people a certain way. Obviously, hello Captain Obvious, but it is also the case that every person who leaves the Libra will be killed by the Libra. So Tannerson was found dead just a few days after his apostasy, and his writings were found right beside him. Initially, the Order published them essentially to make fun of him. Tannerson even writes that the Order would never let these writings be published, or if they do, they would just brand him as a delusional psycho. So anyway, the Order published them because they thought that the people would enjoy making fun of a delusional psycho, and they also added a letter after the last chapter, basically calling him, yes, a delusional psycho, and also denying that the Libra exists, because, you know, we have to have an in-game Illuminati. It turns out, however, that Tannerson got the last last laugh, as his writings deeply resonated with the public. Many viewed him as a vigilante who was willing to kill sinners to create a better world, so the Order stopped printing his writings, and they also issue a warrant to recall all the books that were already in circulation, hence why they can only be found in shady locations now. Now, what was that story all about? Well, I'm here to tell you that not only is the Libra real, it is also way more influential and powerful than the book ever made it out to be. See, the Black Libra is made and guided by the Veiled Woman. The visions the members and the Holy Child receive are entirely legit and accurate, and the Room of Paintings is also real, and it comes up during the Rhalata questline, which we will get to eventually. But why did I say all this? Why not just wait until the Rhalata questline comes up and then say all this? Well, a few reasons. First of all, I want to remind people who is calling the shots here. Her. And despite the fact that predestination has been broken due to the events in Nehrim, everything still follows the same predestined course because nothing has offset the chain of cause and effect just yet. Finally, it is one of the theories of this video that the masked men who killed our parents and sister at the beginning are part of the Nehrimese branch of the Black Libra, who then blamed it on us, and the whole thing was guided by the Veiled Woman to get us where we are right now. But why exactly they did it, and why she wants us to go to Enderal so bad, is still a mystery. Ooh. Talk about a story within a story. We will come back to bits and pieces of the story of the Butcher of Ark and the Black Libra in different times throughout this video, so don't discard what was said just now just yet. Now we have to travel with Jaspar to Ark. One thing I admire about this game is how many biomes it has. Yeah, sure, it makes absolutely no sense why there would be a red forest right next to a tropical desert, or why you can go from a regular forest to a snowy forest with just one step, but they do be looking beautiful. There is a real argument to be had that more than anything, this is a clear step up from Skyrim. When you change biomes, you also change the way the sky looks, the kind of music it plays, and the weather. Gameplay wise, this serves to remind you that the enemies here are a different level than those you encountered on the previous area. Oh, by the way, side quests in this game are side quests in the name only. There are exactly two kinds of people that can complete the main quest without exploring or doing any of the side content. People who cheese, and people who are willing to play trial and error for another 20 hours. But Cotho isn't cheesing the AI, heaven forbid, not the way the developer wants us to experience the game. I have a very clear answer to that question. If the developer did not want us to cheese the game, they wouldn't have made it in the Skyrim engine. I rest my case. I will see you all carrying melee enemies and sidestepping to better kill people with bows. There is, however, a class that cannot be cheesed with any obvious means. Mages. I still wake up in cold sweat in the middle of the night about them. I was peacefully climbing my way up a temple in Tholgrand, and just like that, bam, I got stun-locked by 3 frost mages. Hitting them with spells mostly doesn't work, because the frost spells make it difficult for you to land a shot on them, and even if you do, they use spell words. Bows don't exactly work either because frost spells consume stamina, unless you're really good at snaking. Going with the melee approach doesn't work because obviously frost spells, and I am not sure that they can even run out of mana. Either you're gonna have to power run at them if you're a high enough level, or you're gonna have to die a bunch of times just to land up pathing. Another thing, bosses in this game always come unannounced. Here I am, walking my way downtown, all of a sudden, bam, I got attacked by a Jiggle like himself. No matter how much gear or gold you have, no amount of gear or gold will ever be better than the actual best loot in the game. Mythical spells. Do you know what is the process of obtaining a single mythical spell if you don't go with the boss killing approach? Well, let me tell ya. This spell is called Blizzard.
Sky can rain fire. Magisters never change.
It is a mythical that upon casting creates an area around the player that slows down enemies and creates damage to them over time. If you're melee, it helps you get the upper hand in a 1vx scenario, and if you're light armor, it helps you kite the enemies even better. Overall, pretty good spell. Before you can even use it, you need to have elementalism at level 90. Then you have to go to the alchemy shop in the nobles district of Ark and overhear a conversation between a keeper of the order and the shop owner, which starts a quest which takes you all the way out here. And here things get a bit more complicated. If you have enough underwater breathing potions, you can access a hidden chest in an otherwise unassuming area of this section with a spell in it. There is absolutely nothing pointing out that there is a chest here, and if you miss it, you can't come back to it later. TLDR, if you don't explore, you'll miss some of the best spells in the game, which could make your life a lot easier. Or the may worse, you will end up just using Abomination. Cotho, how many tangents are you willing to go through before you advance the main story? Oh, you haven't even seen the half of it yet. But there you go, here's Ark. Compared to any other city in any other Elder Scrolls game, Ark is on a whole nother level. Firstly, the city is structured like a social hierarchy. The Order is at the very top, right below them are the nobles, below them are the commoners, and even below them is the Undercity. I said that the Order is the one calling their shots in Enderal, but realistically they do not control the Undercity, since that is where all the maggot infested, pathless, unwashed, and drug-addicted people live in. And we can't get those fine garments all muddy now, can we? No, we can't have that. The Undercity is thus ruled by the Rhalata. On the surface, the Rhalata are your typical mafia organization. They demand a quote-unquote security tax from all the inhabitants of the Undercity, and they also provide some semblance of security. But make no mistake, there is no security in the Undercity. They are also connected to different crime networks that operate within the Undercity. On a deeper level, the Rhalata is we will get back to what the Rhalata is on a deeper level, eventually. So we and Jaspar go to the Sun Temple at the very peak of Ark, where we meet Constantine Firespark.
Ouch! I just can't bloody believe it.
Blasted, blistering blazes! That's what you get for working with fumblers.
Apparently, the mages from the Order of the Rogue Mages that rebelled against the Lightborn all the way back in Nehrim have now come to Enderal and are actively working with the Holy Order. This is because they all keep having the same dreams that often involve burnt flesh and a veiled woman. Before Constantine elaborates more on this, however, he takes the time to examine our magic and even gives us a quick explanation on how being an Arcanist works.
Alright then, this will tickle a little.
Pathlessness, wherever we look.
Now you're right. This aura does feel different, complex somehow, and powerful. And do you really want to tell me you've only recently discovered that talent of yours? With that aura, I'm surprised you haven't turned into an Obaya by now.
There are two different ways of quelling the fever. We can go through the approach of the Holy Order and suffer through a year of training and meditation, or we can get one of the Nehrimese mages to cast a spell on us to immediately quell it. Naturally, we go with the second option, and are thus being told to seek out one of the mages that can cast this spell that is currently in Old Rashengrad, and that mage's name is Leshari. Leshari talks like a 13-year-old girl going through a silly naughty words phase, so I really don't like her. She was in Old Rashengrad with a few other Nehrimese mages and a bunch of other keepers of the Order to find a way to protect people from the Red Madness, but they got betrayed, and now we have to help them salvage their research and make it out alive. After we help her, she casts the spell on us, and then she gives us a teleportation scroll to go meet Tielor Aranthiel, Grandmaster of the Order, father of Narazul Aranthiel, and who recently escaped his imprisonment in Nehrim and made it back to Enderal. What precedes is a very lengthy exposition dump told in a very static manner, so I'm gonna speed things up a bit and summarize. Remember during the timeline section of this video where I said that an untold amount of civilizations rose and fell before the beginning of our current established timeline, which began with Asadaron and the reign of the Eterna? Well, the reason for these countless rises and falls is a little thing known as the cycle. In order, the life of every cycle goes as follows. There is an initial spark of life which creates the first civilizations. These civilizations fall to infighting and rebellion, and their fall is followed up by an interregnum period of bloodshed and power struggles to fill the power gap left behind by those fallen civilizations. This period ends with the establishment of a theocracy which brings stability at the cost of freedom. When the theocracy also falls, the world is plunged into turmoil and chaos until for some reason all life disappears, only for it to start again in the exact same way, just with different faces. Imagine it kind of like the Kalpa, but only for people, not existence itself. These events are collectively known as the cycle, and at the end of each cycle, certain people rise up, called emissaries. These emissaries all have specific powers that, according to Aranthiel, should be used to stop the cycle, and to that very same end, the Nehrimese mages decided to travel to Enderal and make peace with the Holy Order, in order to hopefully stop the cycle. As a emissary, the player character is called the Prophet, because he has the ability to look into glimpses of the future, and Tielor Aranthiel is called the Emperor, because, you know, he has a bit of a power complex. Now, Tielor asks us to join the Order before doing anything else, and to do that, we need to pass their trial. Before we get into the trial, however, I need to expand on a couple of things. The main influence behind the writing of the story of this mod is Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung, and it is impossible to do justice to this mod without explaining at least the fundamentals of his beliefs. Realistically, I should have probably mentioned them when we talked about the Lightborn and the Shadowborn, but beyond this point, they become essential. So I present to you Carl Jung's Model of the Psyche. Don't worry if it looks complex, we will get through this together. Holding hands all the way. This model can be broken into three smaller parts: the conscious, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Starting on with the consciousness, and this is described as the realm of understanding a person has about themselves and knowingly identifies themselves with. This is basically the stuff like, I am selfish, I am handsome, I am kind, I am addicted to the lit benzos. Within the center of consciousness is the ego, which is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. This story is generated by us and is unique to us, and it creates a form of continuity which we use to perceive our lives. Within the outer periphery of the consciousness is the persona, which is the outward appearance and mannerisms we portray in different circumstances. Essentially, we talk to ourselves differently, we talk to our grandmas differently, and we even act differently in front of, say, friends or strangers. The reason why it's so far from the ego is because it's not exactly it, rather it is a version of the ego that it deems presentable before these different circumstances. Now, so far everything is pretty nice and dandy and in line with other opinions of other psychoanalysts of the time, like Sigmund Freud for example. But you know, without the penis talk. But after this point, Carl Jung splits unconsciousness between personal unconsciousness and collective unconsciousness. Personal unconsciousness are the aspects of our psyche that we repress or disregard because they do not fit in our idea of the ego. You might think of yourself a certain way because of something you've been through, while in reality, you might be something completely different than what you have in mind because of something else you've been through. Or perhaps you identify yourself with a trait you do not actually have. Or perhaps you may not recognize something that was actually impactful in your life because it doesn't fit the story you tell yourself about yourself. However, these events and traits still affect us. This is the personal unconscious. The collective unconsciousness is the universal principles and patterns observed throughout all mankind. All of us, Jung argued, feel aspects such as the need for motherhood, fatherhood, and socialization, without ever being taught the use or the need for such things. They're just inherent to us as a species. They are kind of linked to natural selection evolution, in the sense that these inherent traits are helpful in allowing us to exist and, well, not dying. But they are also linked to different behaviors and patterns that arise within humans themselves and are consistently found in different places and times throughout different civilizations. Enter archetypes. Basically, identical scenarios, behaviors, and human statuses found in different societies that had no way of communicating with each other, and thus being able to share these patterns. These are, according to Jung, similar expressions of psychic motifs that exist inherently in a human psyche, and although humans do not recognize them as part of themselves, they still provide a framework which unconsciously interacts with their psyche. In the outer periphery of the collective unconscious is the animus for females and the anima for males. These are described as the suppressed feminine traits in males, the anima, and the suppressed male traits in females, animus. Lastly, we need to talk about the shadow. The shadow is all the unknown, repressed, and unwanted by our ego contents of our psyche. In that sense, it is a lot less superficial than our personal unconsciousness. The shadow isn't only the total sum of contents who make you you without even knowing about them. It is also the events that define your character, which you have chosen to abandon, and the shadow also has the potential, as Jung said, to completely ruin someone if one does not tap into it and seek to integrate it into their conscious self. Within the center of all this is the self, which is the total sum of all the parts just mentioned. For Jung, any human can advance themselves spiritually if they seek to discover themselves in all its aspects and then bring forth those aspects into their personal conscious and the persona. This is the process of realizing the self in its most fundamental form.
We know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should be studied because we are the origin of all coming evil.
Before we move on with the class on Jungian psychoanalysis, I feel like whenever people are first introduced into concepts like this, they tend to either not understand them correctly, or in many cases immaturely misdiagnose themselves or people around them based on a flawed understanding of these models. Whenever you examine something on a purely theoretical level, its practical applications are oftentimes obscured. So allow me to give you a practical example of the shadow and the personal unconscious by a psychologist whose book I read a while ago. In this book, the psychologist is visited by a patient who, according to him, cannot stand having running water coming into contact with his face. He couldn't dive in the beach, he couldn't have a shower with his face coming into contact with the water, and when his face did come into contact with running water, he would always stop breathing, almost as if he was suffocating, even if his nostrils weren't blocked. So the psychologist told him to find the roots of this issue by asking around for the first time he ever came into contact with running water, and surely enough, he found it, after asking his mom. And now I quote directly from the book. She told him that when he first arrived home from the maternity ward, she tried to give him a shower for the first time, but due to her inexperience, she made a huge mistake. She placed him right under the tub of the shower, thus leading to the water falling directly upon his face, mouth, and nose, which led to him drowning. The patient was surprised to hear the story, yet he was even more surprised when his mother told him that this very same event was also told to him in the not so distant past as well, as some years ago she had told him this very same incident in front of not only him but a bunch of his friends as well. He had seemingly disregarded this information from his ego. This is the shadow. It follows us everywhere and it affects us in ways we cannot even realize unless we look at the shadow directly and improve ourselves through integrating it into our consciousness. There is no running away from it. It always follows us. Okay then, now that we have given a practical example of the model of the self, a few things need to be said as a follow-up to everything that was just laid down, particularly when it comes to archetypes. Archetypes are both present in the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. Collective unconscious ones are the ones we already explained. Some examples of them, for instance, are the tarot cards that I'm pretty sure everyone has at least seen at some point. We can all recognize concepts such as the lovers, death, justice, strength, without being given a special lesson on them, courtesy of them being archetypes. However, archetypes can exist on a personal level, as well as on a group level, and not inherent to humanity as a whole. Thus, allow me to introduce you to one of such archetypes, the frozen gods. This is a concept that expands way beyond Enderal, yet is pretty much present in that game as well. To better articulate that concept, please allow me to whip out an example from the real world. Sit down and listen. Have I ever told you about the tragedy of the Ninth Symphony? You see, once upon a time, there was this guy called Beethoven. He wrote many masterpieces, but none would even come close to the popularity and universal praise that his Ninth Symphony got. The story of the Ninth Symphony is simply that of a man trying to find happiness in his life. He tries this and that, but none of it works. His emotions becoming darker and sadder with every failure, and the tone of the music becoming darker and darker with every disappointment. Until at last he finds the solution, and in a moment of utter euphoria, he proclaims that happiness comes through the pleasant interactions between humans in their private lives and in their communities. All men are brothers, he says. Whoever had the great fortune of being friend to a friend, whoever has won a devoted wife, should join in jubilation, he says. It wasn't just music, it was a philosophy about humans ascending beyond their current status through brotherhood. It isn't the uniquest of messages, but it is told in such a manner that it has gone down in history as the greatest work of musical art ever to be written. It is so popular to the point that you can just refer to it as the Ninth, and most musicians will understand that you're specifically talking about Beethoven's Ninth. It has been used as the national anthem for nations and the EU, it has seen use to mark new beginnings, and it has also been used by opposite parties to promote the same sentiment, such as the Soviet Union, the Chinese revolutionaries, a certain funny-looking mustache man, and the collapse of the Berlin Wall. Now, all this cemented Beethoven as one of the greatest musicians of all time. But what of the people that came after him? What of all the artists that began their careers as aspiring musicians that have to match or surpass this level of music? Well, let me tell ya, when Russian Soviet composer Dmitri Shostakovich had to write his Ninth Symphony in 1945, more than a century after Beethoven wrote his Ninth by the way, he simply called it Still in the Shadow of the Ninth, which was basically a parody of the Ninth, as he did not think that he could compose anything even remotely close enough to challenge Beethoven's Ninth. On the other hand, Johannes Brahms had listened to the Ninth so many times that when it was his time to write a symphony, he unknowingly ended up copying many of Beethoven's patterns that he used for the Ninth, and he then jokingly named his first ever symphony Beethoven's 10th. Richard Wagner, on the other hand, simply dubbed the Ninth as the death knell of the symphony, because of his belief that after the Ninth, there was simply no other place for symphonies to go. I have to move on with Enderal and Archetypes and all that, but if you're fascinated by this concept of the Ninth, I will leave a video by Inside the Score in the description, where you can learn a lot more about it, as this section was inspired by it. Okay, where am I going with this allegory? Well, in Enderal, and in fantasy universes in general, we constantly see this idea of the insurmountable past. A past that was always, and will always be better than our future and our present, thus being practically stranded in a present that will always be inferior to the past. How many times have we seen this in video games, or even in the real world? Whether it would be medieval era Italians living inside wooden shacks outside the ruins of Rome, or travelers exploring Dome ruins knowing that the technology in said ruins is outmatched by anything else in contemporary Tamriel, the idea of the frozen gods, which we can at best attempt to imitate and at worst are doomed to live in the shadow of, is a constantly recurring one, but it is not a universal one. Beethoven wasn't bound by anything of the past, the Romans weren't living right next to ruins greater than their current buildings, thus the archetype of frozen gods lies only within the realm of personal unconsciousness. In Enderal's case, the game does an incredibly good job at showcasing this feeling of decay and that the glorious past is long gone. The Lightborn are dead, stability is in shambles, and half of the settlements in Enderal that used to be inhabitable are now ruins. There is something so eerie about being in a desecrated land and then seeing an abandoned tower with the banner of the Order on it. Unlike Skyrim, where these towers are usually left blank and only work as hotspots for bandits and combat, in most of these towers in Enderal, there is at least a note hinting at the backstory of this place and how it became a ruin, adding to the feeling that prosperity is a thing of the past. Something else that has to be noted about archetypes is the idea that for every archetype, there exists another archetype that is inherently antithetical to it. You know, for every strength, there is weakness, for every angel, there is a devil, for every hermit, there is a creepy old goblin living in someone's attic, for the Lightborn, there is the Shadowborn, and for every prophet, there is a false prophet, and for every emperor, there is a false emperor. Okay, before we finally move on from the Carl Jung talk, I want to point out two minor things about the relationship between this game and his studies. When talking about dreams, Carl Jung always referred to them as emissaries of the unconscious mind. For him, dreams are the ultimate way with which the unconscious mind presents itself before our conscious self, and analyzing and understanding the meaning of one's dreams is one of the best ways to tap into the unconscious and understand what it has to say about the psyche. If you don't understand how all this relates to Enderal, I can assure you, you will shortly. Thing number two, as I said in the beginning of the video, there are different ways to interpret the plot of Enderal, and I cannot possibly do justice to all of them. In fact, just by looking at the sheer amount of things that I have explained and will explain, it's maybe safe to say that I am maybe overthinking things a little. However, just to pique your curiosity beyond the scope of this video, I want to quickly mention Gnosticism. I cannot possibly do Gnosticism justice in this video. That has to be an entirely different matter that would take 2 hours and a lot of explaining. But in the most bare to bones way I can possibly put it, Gnosticism is an early off-brand of Orthodox Christianity which proposes a radically different structure of the canon mythos of Christianity. Carl Jung was fascinated by this religion, and as someone who has read the 7 Sermons to the Dead by him, I can safely say that it is bizarre beyond human comprehension, and anyone interested in this subject should at least read some introductory material on Gnosticism before reading that particular book. In Enderal, Gnostic references exist all over the game. The Brotherhood of Kor questline is a huge reference to that belief, and in case anyone here is already familiar with the Gnostic mythos, I am pretty sure that the Veiled Woman is an insert for either an Archon like Sophia, or what is even more likely, she's an insert for Yalda Baoth. That is all I'm willing to say on this subject. For now. Now we can finally move on with the Holy Order's initiation ritual. Along with us in this ritual, 2 other people partake in it, Calia and Dunwar. Calia is the second companion just like Jaspar, and there's quite a bit of backstory to her, so we'll come back to her later. Dunwar, on the other hand, is an insecure Eterna that has grown disillusioned after we, a Pathless, were allowed to partake in the ritual without any training, and he also doesn't like the fact that the temple is now essentially overrun by heretical mages.
This country is going downhill, and you are living proof of it, my friend. First, Nehrimese wild mages are allowed to walk on the holy temple grounds as if it were some kind of brothel. Then mercenaries are hired, and now you, an outlander, a pathless, are able to be initiated into the sigils of the Holy Order.
It is strange that I do not hate this character. Usually characters like this are annoying and close-minded morons, but Dunwar's hostility is a product of his insecurity. The world around him crumbles as his life's work is being thrown upside down and his mental state only worsens when he learns that the gods are dead.
The rumors concerning the deaths of the Lightborn, they're true.
What?
The gods are dead. They fell 2 winters ago beneath the sword of an unknown traveler. We, that is, the Order, have known about this for quite some time now, but haven't told the common people yet. But since the 3 of you intend to take the trial, there's no way to disguise the truth anymore.
But how can a god die?
There was a prophecy, as old as the Lightborn themselves, in which there was talk of a shadow god, who would end the era of gods. And it came true. I'm sorry.
You're sorry?
You're telling us that the gods have been killed, and you are sorry. What's next? That tomorrow the sun will stop shining? Tell us that this is a test, Master. It is, isn't it? A test of our faith.
No, the Lightborn are dead.
Then we say a bunch of holy words, drink a strange potion, and pass out.
Oh no. No. I knew I wouldn't be the last one. Did they also tell you the tales about the Keeper's spirit? They've lured you into a trap, you know. And you fell for it. Because you're arrogant. Just as I am. As I was.
You aren't real, are you?
Of course not. At least not according to your definition of the word. But then again, what is reality anyway? If I told you that you and your friend Sirius actually lie dead at the bottom of the sea, and that everything that has happened so far, your journey to Ark, the search at the Sun Coast, was only a dream, would you be able to recognize the truth? The answer is no. Because you don't want to be dead. Therefore, your mind will do anything to make you believe this entire dream you've had was and is reality.
How am I able to dream if I'm already dead? That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't it? Tell me, what is time to the dead and dreaming anyway? The last second before the water floods into your lungs. The very last instant before it tears them apart. In your mind, it could be an eternity. A self-created sanctuary built from nothing but your wishes. But what's the point in talking anyway? You don't want to believe me. And I'm tired of trying to make you. Now leave me alone, before we make the suppressor even angrier. He doesn't like words. He likes the silence.
The suppressor?
What? They haven't told you about him? Oh, that's so typical. The suppressor. He's the reason why we will be imprisoned here forever, and why we can't access our feelings and wishes. And he does it because he wants us to lose hope. To stop believing. And, you know, sometimes I wonder if that's exactly what we humans, what I have to do to finally be free. Give up. Detach myself from the dreams of the past. Who knows if there were anything else than phantasms to begin with. But no. No, not yet. It's too early to surrender. And isn't that what makes us human, anyway? To hope? And to just keep on waiting for that one miracle that will end the pain once and for all? Yeah, I'll wait. And you will wait with me forever.
If you walk up to the cages, they mysteriously disappear, and you and this Aixon fella get to roam around the halls of the suppressor. This place is guarded by seducers, but no sign of any suppressors. There is also a letter here which essentially regurgitates what Aixon talked about earlier. The further we progress in this dungeon, the more pessimistic Aixon gets. There is also the corpse of our dad here. When we navigate the dungeon, we end up exactly where we started. Back to the cage with Aixon, and this time he's really mad about provoking this suppressor dude. Why are you so afraid of the suppressor? I haven't seen anything.
No, you haven't. Because you're blind. The suppressor is here, in every single stone, in every bone, in every drop of blood, and yet you are too blind to see it. But I should have known. I mean, what can you expect from someone who has killed his entire family? I followed you because for a brief moment, you made me want to believe, and now you've dragged me into the abyss along with you.
I don't understand. Who are you? A part of me? An illusion?
Of course I'm a part of you, and you are a part of me. Isn't that obvious? But I should have known you wouldn't understand. You're too weak. You always were.
But there must be a way out of here.
No, there isn't. Just look at us. Look at what we are. We are the damned because we are trapped too deeply in the past. And that's why we do not deserve freedom.
As you can probably tell by this point, this guy is our shadow. He's an amalgamation of all our unconscious guilt, doubt, and unwanted traits we pushed all the way to the back of our unconscious.
Well. So you figured it out? Yes. I am what keeps you in this place. But was it blind rage that made you act, or have you truly understood who I am? Have you understood what drives you and determines your actions? The salt corrodes your skin, and the water filling your lungs is cold. But you still haven't found it, child, have you?
We then wake up back in the temple with only Jaspar in the room with us. But, what exactly is this thing? Of course, this entire scene is also a dream, but this time, it's laid out by the true villains of this mod. The High Ones.
At first, we believed it would be more exciting this time. But now that we've seen the new prophet, our hopes are gone. You're a joke.
A nobody who let his only friend kick the bucket.
As if you'd ever accept that. You humans are always so damn persistent, aren't you? Why? Why can't you just let go?
Because in the end, you are powerless, just as all those before you. And you, Prophet, you are the biggest joke of all.
You are nothing but an urchin.
A weakling.
And a murderer. And that is why you will burn. All of you. The cleansing will happen, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
What have I even done to you?
What have you done to us? You are so naive. The world is an interplay of cause and effect, and the only logical consequence of your existence is annihilation. That's the way it was, and that's the way it's going to be. But enough of the banter, urchin. We wanted to meet you, and so we did, even though the result is rather sobering. Now wake up. Keep on stumbling through the mist.
There's a lot to be said about the High Ones, but all that is necessary for this section to make sense is that the event that ends the cycle is known as the cleansing, yet exactly what causes the cleansing isn't known to us yet. This whole quest is a nod to René Descartes' concept that there's a demon living inside each and every single one of us, shaping our concept of the world and altering our version of reality. Something last to be said about Aixon before we move on. For the longest time I was wondering what this guy's name meant, and now I believe I have found it. But it's a bit of a stretch. Aixon was a king of ancient Greece who, due to his ongoing inability to learn from his mistakes and his constant failures to redeem himself, was cursed to forever be imprisoned within Tartarus. When we wake up for real, we're inside the very same room, but with Dunwar and Calia this time. Calia managed to pass the test before us, but Dunwar has given into his guilt, and it is very unlikely that he will ever wake up again. Thus, he never shows up for the rest of the story. The end. This is probably a good point to introduce Calia's backstory. When she was a child, she was found unconscious in a remote village, and shortly after, the entire village was set on fire, and the reason for the fire remains unknown. She managed to escape and walk all the way to Ark, where she spent the next few years of her life in the Undercity, before she was found by a member of the Order who brought her into the temple as she appeared to have some magical talents inside her. More on her later. And with that, we become a keeper of the Holy Order, and we set out with Jaspar to complete our first mission, to locate the Word of the Dead from the Aged Man.
Do you know the Aged Man of whom no one knows from whence he came? His house lies on the edge of a solitary cliff.
This quest is amazing. It also keeps me up at night. The whole point of this mission is that we want to access the memories of a dead Pyrean to learn more about the cleansing, the Red Madness, and how to prevent them. This artifact is in the possession of a man who is simply referred to as the Aged Man. This guy is shrouded in mystery. First of all, he lives completely alone and separated from the rest of the world in his own manner. He is older than the Lightborn themselves, and his power is such that even the Lightborn told everyone to stay far away from him. However, he is also interested in trading artifacts. So we and Jaspar have to go there pretending to be artifact sellers, gain residence to his manor for the night, and sneak out at some point during the night to access the Word of the Dead without him noticing. And that is exactly how it all seems to go down. We go there, his servant opens the door, he tells us that his master Gages is busy for the night, and he tells us that he will talk to us in the morning, and in the meantime, he offers us a night stay in the manor. Well, that was easy. Or was it? First of all, his manor is filled to the brim with burned mannequins, which we have seen time and time again in our own visions. Just look at this one. Tell me it doesn't scream sus sus sus. I'm gonna say this now, a lot of these mannequins depict different events that happen within the lifetime of the Prophet. Anyway, he also plays a piece of music throughout the night called Fleshless. Anyway, times two. His servant also, in his infinite hospitality, prepared a small meal for us. My favorite. Slightly charred meat. Anyway, times three. He also has this to say about his master's art.
Master Gages always says art is unique because it allows us to see what our mind doesn't want us to see.
What's that supposed to mean?
Well, we all have demons inside of us, don't you agree, Miser Dalvaric? Memories, truths about ourselves we've locked away somewhere in our unconscious because we don't want to confront them. True art surpasses all these barriers because it reminds us of who we truly are.
Call me paranoid, but this all went a little too smooth for my liking. For example, the fact that he was already standing near the gate when you rang, and that he lives with a man who's older than the Black Guardian, at least according to the legends. But, well, to each his own.
So we wait for a few hours and then we start exploring the place. As we navigate our way through the manor, we find a room with a hidden door and a letter with a password, which reads, "My dear friend, it is such a delight to hear from you again. I don't wish to lie to you, but my hopes are limited. At first the changes in Nehrim seem so promising, but now everything is back to its old pace. I am concerned for you too, my dear friend. I value you as a man of strong character, but your last letter kept me worrying. Don't forget what led me to my ruin back then. My pride was my fall. Don't let my mistake be the same as yours. In brotherly love, Gauges." I will explain what I make of this letter when we finish the quest. The password for the hidden room is, "My pride was my fall." Then a trapdoor opens and we fall down the basement where the Word of the Dead is. What is also in this basement is a woman in water.
Gauges, why did you wake me? Are we there yet?
Gauges? I'm not Gauges.
Oh, darling. Never too old for a jest, are you? I'm sorry you have to go through all this, really. All this time, I can hardly imagine how hard that must be for you. But I still believe in our dream. I still do.
I will tell you who I believe this woman is later on as well, but for now we have work to do with the Word of the Dead. When we get into Pyrean's memory, we gain access to a scroll full of glyphs that we came here for, and we also find out that the Pyreans got betrayed before they could stop the High Ones, and thus they got cleansed. But how that happened still isn't shown to us. When we wake up, we see the servant in front of us who tells us that he was the aged man all along. Well, how did I get here?
Well, what do you think? I brought you here. After you broke into my sanctum and made your little journey into the realm of the dead. Please, don't look at me like that. I knew what you were up to from the start. Sadly enough, I did.
You knew about our plan? I don't understand.
No, you don't. Because you don't dare to question. Peculiar situation, all of this, isn't it? Suddenly you, the fugitive urchin, become mankind's salvation. And suddenly, just like that, out of nowhere, you can perform feats others would require decades to master. Even better, you are one of the emissaries who can hear the echo of the future. But still, you never asked yourself why.
Well, at least you seem to know the answers.
You're right, I do. But if there's one thing time has taught me, there are things one has to realize for him or herself. You can't force insight on people. It has never worked, and it never will.
How do you know all this? Who are you?
Who am I? Back then, I might have given you an impressive response to that. But at this time, I couldn't say anything that would help you. Let's just say I'm an observer. A fleshless eye, if you prefer. In this era, you might also know me as the Aged Man.
According to the legend, the Aged Man is centuries old. You don't look that old.
Yes. And I'm certain that irritates you. But timelessness isn't that much of a feat. You will find that out yourself, soon enough, too.
And what do you observe? The cycle?
Amongst other things, yes. The cycle.
Can you be a bit more direct?
Believe me, all I say is quite thought through. But unfortunately, there's no point in pursuing this conversation any further. You have what you came for, and the rest is up to you. Even though I doubt it will make much of a difference.
What's that supposed to mean? That we can't stop the cleansing?
Maybe you could do just that, but time will tell. Now, forgive me.
Then the Maro disappears, and so does he, but he lives with us, the Word of the Dead. And also Jaspar shows up, because, you know, we kinda forgot about him. So we take the glyphs back to the temple, they cast a spell using them, and it produces a bunch of fragments that apparently guard people against the Red Madness. So what was that whole Agent Man quest about, really? Well, ideally, this plot twist will be better served at a later point during the main story, but given that we still have a bunch of stuff to go through, I will just lay it out before you right now. The Agent Man was once a prophet himself who escaped the cycle because he thought he was better than everyone else in the world around him at the time, and cometh the next cycle, he wanted to steer humanity to the right direction so they can finally get rid of the High Ones. But he couldn't, which is why he keeps mentioning that he cannot explain to us what we have to experience to learn. The woman in the water is his version of Calia, and we will see at the end of the story how the prophet has the option to either pick Jespar or Calia to come with them in the next cycle. So that explains the dolls alright. He has the exact same memories we have. It also explains the references to charred meat and the statue of the veiled woman in the hallway. He is a previous version of ourselves who said F you to his humanity only to figure out that his pride was his fall. Which begs the question, for whom is that letter we found in his study office? This entire quest is very much open to speculation, and all that I just said, be they accurate or inaccurate, is still my speculation of this quest. And so with the following statement, and I think that this letter was meant for us and no one else. First of all, let's touch on the logistics. This is a man who no one dares approach, lives completely alone in the middle of nowhere, and has no one to pick up his mail. Who would pick up and deliver such a mail if it was indeed intended for someone else's eyes? And why would he go out of his way to add the password to his secret room to this letter, which is located, mind you, right next to the secret room? And if he knew that we would be coming, which he did, why would he not just remove the letter from the desk before we show up? As for the contents of the letter itself, I feel like this is his way of finally having an honest talk with us. Think about it. Different prophets have been knocking on this guy's door, circle after circle, for God knows how long. It is only natural that he would refer to us as friends he hasn't talked to in years.
Believe me, all I say is quite thought through.
He then says that he hoped things will be better after the main character in Nehrim broke predestination, but now he's upset because things keep going the exact same way, with no visible change happening so far. He also advises us not to do the same mistake he did, which will come up eventually. And because he's also the prophet, he feels connected to us, hence why he refers to us as brothers. I mean, after all, we do have the same memory and destiny, and that was the Aged Man. A fleshless eye, doomed to see humanity rise and die again and again, unable to help them, yet unable to abandon them either. I think the whole "are we there yet" his companion says refers to them finally ascending beyond their current predicament, or, I don't know, just dying, just anything, like they're stuck in a loop. Back at Holy Order HQ, we have a lead on how to kill the High Ones. So a knowing 13-year-old girl going through a naughty words phase heads out with an expedition team to Old Rothengrad in search of that lead, but turns out that those ruins were completely filled with bandits, so we and Calia have to go to help them. Things here spiral into a moral dilemma real quickly, as the bandits were apparently gathered by a poor farmer who wanted the money to pay off a loan he took to a loan shark after a year of bad harvest almost left him and his family completely homeless. With a bit of rhetoric, we can figure out that the money was actually taken from the food bank of the Undercity, which is very much not helping his case. Not that it really mattered though, as while they were trying to escape, the veiled woman appeared before them, killed 2 bandits, and forced the rest of them to flee in this cave. Here we have the option to arrest him and confiscate the money, or let him run with it. If we arrest him, Calia will like that. But I am led to believe that letting him run away with it might just be the better choice, as if you let him go, a few days later he comes back to you, basically kissing your knees and being super thankful for showing him mercy. After that, we advance further in the dungeon, only to find this, the beacon. If it is set up in the right way, it can banish the High Ones forever and end the cycle. So we go back with this knowledge to Holy Order HQ, where Teodor Ranthiel demands the immediate construction of the beacon as soon as possible. He also tells us to come back in a day or two, as a strange occurrence has just happened in Enderal's coast. Speaking of strange occurrences, I failed to mention that while we were in the ruins, this happened.
Or you will regret it.
Such determination. All right, then. Die!
As you wish.
So that's disquieting. If we confront her about this after the end of the quest, she tells us that she had this shadow self inside her for as long as she can remember, and that she has always tried to suppress it in order to not cause harm to anyone. Yet she's both afraid of that thing and unaware of its origins at the same time. This of course has had quite the mental impact on her, mostly because it confirms to her that she's the witch child people say she is, and because that shadow feels pleasure from committing atrocities. We will get back on this shadow self later. After this point in the mod, an event happens which basically rails you into the main plot, so I want to take this time to mention the side quests and give a bit more of a deep dive to some of the more important ones. I cannot speak highly enough of the side content in Enderal. Every single one of them either tries to subvert expectations or is set up in an incredibly unique way. For most of us, the first side quest we will experience in this game will start when we find a lady passed out on shore, not far away from Riverville, in a position that I can only describe as submissive and... no. She tells you that she is so sad because she lost her child. Oh my god. A family crisis ready to be solved by a wandering traveler. Fear not, fair maiden, for I shall save your offspring. So you go fight a Vatir at level 2, which is pretty difficult by the way, and this is her baby. Oh no. She's one of those chihuahua owners that call those permanently shaking malformed monstrosities their children. Look at this beautiful scenery. My, what a beautiful place. I wonder what kind of stories will be told here. Maybe we will cure a tree. Maybe we'll plant a bunch of flowers. Nature is healing. What if I told you that this is actually the place where a desperate apothecary tried to cure that madness, but instead had a mental breakdown after huffing fumes, tripped on acid, and died instead? Yep, this is actually my favorite quest. Sometimes you'll see a note on a wall in Ark saying about an amazing adventure, and that all adventurers who seek to join on said adventure should show up outside the city walls, only to show up there and figure out that there is no adventure, unless you count the bandits who baited you out of the city here so they can rob you and kill you on adventure. In that case, oh boy, is this an adventure for you. Other side quests are just brilliant world building. I once saw a desperate man trying to recruit someone to gather materials for his sick daughter, who apparently had belly worms. Sure, why not? Excuse me, what is this recipe? Rat meat, garlic, and butterfly wings to cure belly worms. And who exactly told you that your daughter had belly worms, my sir?
You see, 2 weeks ago I met a traveler in the Red Ox. An apothecary. He didn't wear the yellow robes, but he undoubtedly knew his craft. I told him about Bea, and he offered to examine her, for free.
How much did he then charge you for this here fine recipe?
200 pennies. But he needed the money because...
I, you, and everyone here have watched those videos of different animals being infected by bellyworms, but I doubt any of them made the creatures they infested acting like this.
Burn! You're all going to burn! They'll set us free! They'll set us all free!
Oh dear, that'd be the red madness. This is a logical scenario that can happen under the circumstances presented by the main story. A poor, hardly educated father finds his daughter plagued with madness. He doesn't want to believe it, he gets scammed by someone who's willing to take advantage of his desperate situation, and before he knows it, he's out there trying to get someone to mix rat meat and garlic for him to cure bellyworms. I also remember someone getting trapped in a painting that one time. That might have just been a fever dream from oblivion though. The line between reality and fiction has started blurring ever since I started making this video, and ever since I started my supplements and meat diet. In hindsight, I might have underestimated how easy it is to acquire the stuff that paralyzes people in the previous video. You have to go through 3 different dungeons to get it, and yeah, it's clearly very powerful and can basically solo the game on its own, but the dungeons, unless you are really good at snaking, they're gonna be a bit of a challenge. This is the first game in my gaming history where I actually finished it without amassing a grand total of 5 to the power of 10 health potions. A lot of times exploration alone can feel like side questing. The developers did not have time to finish all the ideas they had for the mod, so many locations feel like they should have been more than just random locations on a map, but as it turns out, that is exactly what they are now. You might get a few notes detailing the backstory of these locations. These make up for about 65% of the total locations in this game. Then, there are the guilds. 2 of them to be exact, the Golden Sickle and the Rhalata. The Golden Sickle is a cool story with a few unexpected twists and turns, but it doesn't have much plot-wise, and is at most some nice world building, so I'm gonna have to skip that one and head straight to the Rhalata questline, as that's where all the juicy stuff are at. Hear me, oh hear me, fair people of the YouTubes, for I have a controversial yet fair statement to announce. The Rhalata questline is better than all of Skyrim guild questlines combined. It's not terribly long, it knows not to bore the player with side objectives and needless complications. It also has actually impactful endings. Ha! Your move, companions. But most importantly, it is an extremely compelling story that is being told in such a way that it requires a bit of reading between the lines to make full sense of. To begin, we need to start by participating in the fights that take place in the dust pit of the Undercity. It's basically the Oblivion Arena all over again, until we get to the most rad introduction of a character that I have seen so far in the Skyrim engine.
Let's see you dance.
This is Thariel. He wants to hire us to kill the leader of the Rhalata and one of the most memorable villains that I have ever encountered in a video game. The father. From what he tells us, he wants us to kill him because the father abducted him and a lot of other children from an orphanage when they were still young and experimented on them, which got them killed. But he survived. Remember when I said that the Rhalata is only a mafia on a surface level? Well, here's what they actually are, and what do they believe in?
That the physical body is the worst thing that ever happened to man. It's a whole that needs to transcend. But we digress. If we're to work together, you'll soon have some rogue cultists telling you all this shit anyway.
Does that mean you were able to flee?
Kind of. After the father was done with us, he simply disposed of our corpses. This is also the first memory I have of that time after the abduction. Waking up in a pile of dead bodies. I don't know exactly, but I must have been somewhere between 12 to 14 years old. Still half a child, in other words. As you can imagine, I was a mess for the first few moons after that. Once I was able to think somewhat straight again, I looked for help in the upper city. Of course, the guards didn't believe a word of what I said and sent me right back down into the caverns.
Yet now you're the voice of the father and intent on killing him.
Correct. Let's put it this way. I came to realize that no matter how much I cursed and cried, nobody would come to my help. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I taught myself how to survive and how to fight. And years later, I entered the dust pit for the first time. One of the voices saw how well I could fight and offered me to study the Rhalata. Their codex, their holy scripture, written by the father himself. I shaved my head and became a scion, the lowest rank.
So you're out for revenge?
Revenge? Yes. I want this monster to pay for what he did to me and the others. And I want to make sure that it will never hurt anyone again. Ever. One of the core beliefs of the Rhalata concerns the Day of Transcendence. It's the day when every Relame who's ever proven him or herself worthy leaves their body to continue existing as an immortal, immaterial being. And they also believe that this day is imminent, since the Father found a way to achieve transcendence for himself and for his lambs. In the weeks to come, it will set out an expedition to the Frostcliff Mountains. Since this expedition will be an extremely dangerous undertaking, he will bring along almost a dozen of the best mercenaries available. You will be one of them, and together, we will kill the Father.
To convince the father that he should hire us for the expedition, Thariel suggests that we should track down and give him the missing pieces of the Butcher of Ark. Remember when I said that the Butcher of Ark story comes up in a big way during the Rhalata questline? Well, now it's that time. Thariel also tells us a story about the Black Libra, which should sound very familiar to us. The Night of the Blind Daughters.
A massacre that took place 20 years ago. It was at the farmer's coast, around midsummer. The farmers had just put out the lights after a long day's work. Suddenly, shrouded figures showed up out of nowhere, with steel masks covering their faces. They broke into the houses and killed anybody who dared to stand in their way. While they merely wreaked havoc on most of the farms, any family with a daughter between 12 and 16 winters was less lucky. All in all, these masked people took 10 daughters that night and carried them away. They were found 1 week later. They lay on the Penny Road, mutilated with their eyes sewn shut. 1 girl each mile.
If you remember during Thanatos' description of the initiation ritual, it is him witnessing himself in different stages of his life, wearing different masks, before seeing himself executing himself in the room of paintings, and then doing the same thing in the real world. And the father believes that that ritual is the key to transcendence. To find the pages, we need to find Calia and convince him to give them to us. Yes, that Calia. Only thing is, when we finally get to speak to him, there is something wrong about him. If you remember from the book, Calia was a monster, but have a look at him here.
Nehrimese needs sleep.
Nihilak, you're Calia.
Calia? No. Calia is dead. You're talking to Nehrimese, his shadow. Why do you ask? Who are you?
Somebody looking for information.
Information? You remind him of Calia when he still lived. So much anger in you, so much hatred. Calia knew this feeling too well. This anger, this cold, rotten wrath. And then the dream came and showed him his calling. But he was so blind, he didn't see where the road led him. Only when those little flowers' corpses lay dead in the dust did he see what he had done, what he had become. Now Calia has been punished. He's dead, and Nehrimese deserves to suffer for eternity.
The Libra kills anyone who tries to desert. How come you're still alive?
I told you! Because Nehrimese buried his old skin. The Libra doesn't care about Nehrimese. Why should they? He's vermin.
You actually believe in that nonsense?
Aren't you listening? The decrees don't lie. Those little flowers had to die because if they had not, something terrible would have happened. Calia knew, Nihilak still knows, but still, it broke him. All their pain, their tears, their suffering, their screams. It was too much to bear, even for him.
So, this is a shocker. I will get back to what the Room of Painting is and what it did to Calia and why the father cares about it so much soon enough. But for now, the existential shocks don't end here, as we travel with Nihilak and Thariel deep into the mines to find the lost pages. But that is not the only thing we find when we open the crane that contains them.
What the? Oh, shit.
I thought that I buried Nihilak was a metaphor.
You mean this body is... nonsense. You want to know what I think? This is probably some poor sod that crossed this lunatic's path at the wrong time. So we put him right into the crate with the pages. Bloody son of a whore.
The pages, a burnt corpse, and a mask. And a dull one at that. When you confront him about this, he says something, well, very weird.
He said it before, didn't he? Calia couldn't continue to live in this shell after what he did, so he shed it and gave birth to Nehrilak. And Nehrilak buried him, together with the memories.
Thariel then decides to kill him, but before he does, we get this scene.
Any last words?
Letho.
What?
Nehrilak remembers. By the name of the sun, you were in the refuge orphanage, you and your friend, Letho.
What do you know about the refuge?
Back then, before the flesh maggot plague, when Nehrilak was still strong, the Kyranian woman who ran the orphanage gave him work. Don't you remember? He carried crates, he cleaned the floor, he cooked.
That was you? Uncle Nehrilak?
Yes, that's what you called him, Uncle Nehrilak. By the Guardians, it's been so long, but he remembers it all now. You and your friend, you were inseparable. Until...
You're right. I do remember.
What?
You were there when they took us. Worse, you helped them. What did she pay you, that old cunt? Huh? Carrying crates? Selling children to the Rhalata? All the same, isn't it?
No, what? Nehrilak doesn't understand. He only...
I cannot describe to you how lost I was the first time I played this quest, but thankfully, you all don't have to be. Okay, what is happening here? Well, let me tell ya, Nihilak was honest about everything. Not a single lie came out of his mouth on that day. After the incident with the blind daughters, he regretted his life as an assassin for the Black Libra just like Tennyson did, and he returned to the Room of Paintings and executed himself there, only to be reborn as an older version of himself. Nihilak, the Room of Paintings has the ability to reborn someone into their very own shadow.
Calia? No. Calia is dead. You're talking to Nehrilak, his shadow.
Through this process they shed their skin and become new people, and the father knows this, which is why he believes that if he were to fix his shadow to become that of any material version of himself, he will reach transcendence in the Room of Paintings. We give the pages to the Rhalata, and they give us another mission to make sure that they can work with us. They give us the task of killing a deserter called Sister Pride. After we track her down, Sister Pride talks to us and tells us that the reason why she left was because she began feeling a feeling of estrangement from other humans, and she even reported not being able to see other people's faces.
Sometimes, when I talk to people, their faces began to run off. Like color. Like wax.
She practically begs us to kill her and take her out of her misery, so sure, why not?
Father, forgive me.
Oh, Scarim Engine. You never failed to disappoint by ruining any kind of seriousness a scene might have. Anyway, we take her heart back to the Rhalata, and then we're allowed to continue working with them. Before the father makes a final decision on us, we get to go on a side quest with Thariel, where he goes to the orphanage he was taken as a child, to find out exactly why there were children here being sold to the Rhalata, and what the father actually did to them. Now, there are many ways to communicate to an audience the mental state of an actor, or say an NPC, without having a narrator telling them about it, or by putting a tattoo on their forehead that says, "A scar, oh my god, he's so hurt right now." But never in my days have I experienced the feeling of utter confusion and strange sense of puzzlement as I have during this one scene.
Snip, 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 cut through the throat. The head rolls off, the soul's afloat.
Thariel?
Thariel? Yes, Thariel. Back then he still existed. Now he's gone. Now there's only Brother Wrath. He killed them all, you know. Lethal, Wilma, have all of them gone or dead. Because we couldn't enter the cold flesh. We screamed. We screamed as loud as we could. Because it hurt so bad. But then that would have made him angry. Because then he couldn't concentrate anymore. But what else should we have done? It just hurt so bad. No matter how much of the blue juice he gave us, it always hurt so bad.
You're talking about the father, aren't you?
Father. Yes, our father. We never saw his face, you know. She always wore this mask, this terrible, scary mask.
Do you remember what he did to you?
Yes, he wanted to make us happy. That's what she always said, that she wanted to make us happy. At first I believed him, but then they took Letho. Letho, they just came in and took him into the room. I heard him scream. Hours and hours, and then suddenly silence. Silence for eternity. But I shouldn't talk so much. Too much talking makes the father angry. Just let me sleep, will you? Just sleep.
What a scene. When he wakes up, he is completely clueless about this whole ordeal. The only other thing to keep in mind from this quest is that Letho is a childhood friend of Thariel's who took him after he was abandoned as a child. The two children then ended up in the orphanage, and they were both sold off to their Rhalata at the same time. Apparently Thariel had a pretty bad cough when he was a child, and now it seems to be mysteriously absent. But beyond the point of getting kidnapped, the only thing he remembers is waking up in a pile of dead children with Letho nowhere to be seen. After this quest, we're introduced to the father for the first time in a dream. I want to let this clip play so we can understand the cinematography with which the father appears.
Dawn is coming. Seek the first seer.
What a guy. Well, I say guy, but the father doesn't have a gender. In fact, I'm pretty sure that this whole animus and anima thing is completely gone to him.
Gender is just another asinine attribute we wrongly identify ourselves with. Isn't it ludicrous if you think about it? We are so proud of what apparently separates us from animals, yet we blindly submit ourselves to the domination of our flesh. Young, old, beautiful, hideous, man, woman, all descriptors of something ultimately irrelevant.
So he hires us for the expedition and then explains himself and his ideology to us.
Does the name Manit Dalgalang sound familiar to you? The man who left his body?
No.
He was one of the former Grand Masters of the Order, a righteous man, but also of a very reclusive nature. It is said that Dalgalang had always been a little peculiar. In the few records that are left of him, he once described how he never felt as though he belonged in this world. Thus, he made freeing himself from this sense of estrangement his purpose in life.
He felt as if though he didn't belong in this world?
Yes, as though life was a bad play that his body was forced to take part in. Dalgalang despised all the other things people enjoyed. He didn't copulate, ate only as much as his body needed, and slept very little. One day, he vanished. Just like that, in the bright light of day, during one of his meditations at the Eye of the Gods. Even though there were observers, the Order didn't record his vanishing in the chronicles for obvious reasons. According to them, Dalgalang simply disappeared on a pilgrimage.
So this has something to do with overcoming the estrangement and the mission, right?
I believe so. He succeeded in freeing his spirit from the vessel of his body, and the strange occurrences that happened after confirm my theory. His mother, for example, insisted that he visited her in spectral form at the death feast, and told her that he was sorry. His servant, who was the closest thing Dalgallang had to a friend, heard his voice when he laid down flowers at his pathstone. Or the keepers, who saw a ghost meditating in his former laboratory at night. All coincidences or phantasms, you may say, but to me, it is clear that Dalgallang achieved his goal. He managed to separate his soul from his body. He achieved transcendence.
So your faith originated from Dalgallang?
I suppose you could say that, yes. Dalgallang was among the first humans to realize how misguided we are and how little of our potential we actually use. When I first heard his story, I instantly recognized myself in him. In particular, his fascination with the idea of overcoming our fleshly nature. I was enthralled and made this idea the purpose of my life, which finally led me to found the Rhalata. Frankly, I still find it baffling how few people share this quest. All they care about is the satisfaction of their carnal desires. They are so proud of what separates them from a pig, and yet they achieve little else in their lives. Eat, copulate, die. And all it would take to show them what their minds are capable of would be a glimpse into their dreams. Either way, I digress.
So he tells us that the plan is to go to the temple that houses the Room of Paintings and clear the way for the father and other members of the Rhalata to come by opening a portal. Of course, this is where Thariel will show up and kill the father before he gets to access the room. Before you go there, you have the chance to talk to the father a bit more. He or she, it, says that it never viewed itself as a spiritual leader and more of a scientist who apparently is about 400 years old. When we finally get outside the temple, and it's a long walk, the father gives this speech.
The world is on the brink. It always has been, but never before have the signs been more clear. An illness, which the Order calls the Red Madness, devours people's minds. Wars plague the land, and frenzied animals tear apart cattle and farmers alike. And it is only a matter of time before this country too will drown in chaos.
Without any direct knowledge of the cycle or high ones, he is perfectly aware that the world is coming to an end and that the wars, the red madness, and the chaos on the streets are all signs of that. Also, I want to point this out, the father is so OP he hardly walks, he just teleports everywhere. Inside the temple, and we quickly realize that everything here is basically a personification of our own unconscious mind. We watch Jespar, our dad, our mother, and our sister. We kill the third mercenary to advance inside the temple, and we even find the Room of Paintings. And Thariel even kills Brother Hate. Because, screw it, if you're gonna go rogue, you might as well go rogue all the way. Before we open the portal, this happens.
Aren't we beautiful?
Holy shit.
Yeah? That's what I said. This is a pretty hard boss fight. You better come geared because this boss has several ways of Oh, never mind, it fell from the map. Why do people even bother modding this game? We then open the portal, and the father realizes what is actually happening here.
I should have known. You were losing your mind, just as Sister Pride did. That's why you lured me here, isn't it? In your madness, you want to kill me.
Nonsense! You're here to finally pay for what you did. Children, damn it. They were children. Wilma, Detlef, Sarah, Taurus, Letho. And you couldn't care less. We were just material for you. Human material for your fucking experiments.
That is enough. I will kill them, Father.
No, wait. You remember? You remember what was before? No, don't say anything. You do. By the sun, this is fascinating. But I suppose I should have seen it coming. You always were my masterpiece.
Masterpiece?
You are right, Thero. I did experiment upon children because they are special. And yes, some of you died in my laboratory. But they would have died anyway.
They would have died because they were orphans anyway, right?
No, because they were sick. If you remember your past, Theral, do you also remember that cough you had? Detlef, Wilma, Sarah, Letho, and you. You were all affected by the foulness, a disease transmitted by rats in the Undercity. Children are especially susceptible to it, and it is always lethal.
Lies. Nothing but lies.
Not yet. Believe me or not, it's the truth. However, I didn't intend to heal them. At least not by conventional methods. There is no cure for foulness. Before I found out about the Room of Paintings, I conducted a lot of experiments through which I hoped to find a way to achieve it. The dying children were a part of it. My goal was to give them a new artificial vessel to cheat death.
Cheat death?
Yes, to extract their souls and plant them inside another body. The Pyreans did something similar by binding spirits to objects or places, so I tried to apply the same principle in my experiments. Transfer the soul of the dying child into an artificial body. It never worked, however. The soul always lost its identity upon extraction, degenerated into pure magical energy. Eventually, however, I had a breakthrough. Not only did I manage to extract a child's soul, I was also able to transfer it into a simulacrum. At first, it all seemed perfect, and I was raptured. The children simply fell asleep and awoke inside a new body.
But something went wrong, didn't it?
Yes, I call it the estrangement. The transferred soul somehow begins to realize that something is wrong, which at first manifests in moments of confusion, and finally in the inability to see faces. Sister Pride, yes. She was one of my last creations before I gave up my endeavor entirely. Most of the children died days or weeks after the transfer, save for 3 exceptions: Brother Sorrow, Sister Pride, and Brother Wrath. Yes, Theral, you heard right. You are my creation, my child. At first I thought your transfer had failed, so I disposed of your flesh. But then, 8 years later, there you stood, in front of the temple, in your right mind, and showing no signs of the estrangement. Sister Pride reappeared too. Both of you had somehow found your ways back to your creator. I was moved.
Your child. All right. Oh, that was a nice story, but I think I've heard enough. Do you see this knife, Father? I'm going to drive it deep into your throat, and into yours too, Brother Sorrow. And I'll enjoy every second of it. The question is, are you still with me?
Remove your mask.
Of course.
Do you recognize him, Theral?
Oh.
Yes, Theral. Letho. His procedure went a little differently. His original body died at the exact moment I conducted the transfer. I believe that this is the reason for his lack of humanity. But at the same time, his condition seems to protect him from the estrangement. Unlike Sister Pride and yourself, he still shows no symptoms, and I doubt he ever will.
You're alive? That's not possible. That's just not possible.
It's pointless, Theral. He's not the boy you once knew. I'm sorry.
No, that's not true. Please. Hello, it's me. It's me. Thariel.
What are your orders, Father? Shall I kill them?
Well, I suppose that is their decision to make. I am not the monster you think I am, Theral. I hope you can finally see that. And I am ready to.
I repeat, this quest is amazing. If we help Thariel, we still lose, because the father is a bit strong, that one. The father then leaves us to leave, because for him, life is the ultimate punishment. Damn, what a sentence to say genuinely. He then transcends just like he always wanted, and the room of paintings also disappears. Then, depending on the rapport you have with Thariel, he will either throw himself off the cliff created by the disappearance of the room, or he will get out of the temple along with us. I didn't manage to save him. Oops. Not that any of this matters though, because helping the father is definitely the better call. He gives us an OP horse, his mask which clears the entire game if you're going for a psionic or entropy build, and he also says this.
Farewell, and thank you.
Something noteworthy to be said before we wrap this questline up, I want to point out Thariel's and the father's ignorance during this quest. The father lays it out spectacularly, but essentially both he and Thariel avoided the obvious signs about what the other person was, as they were clinging on to what they thought each other was. Thariel's entire identity was based on the idea that the father was a monster, and he could not accept otherwise. And in the same manner, the father derived great happiness from seeing Thariel grow, even if he never reciprocated this joy. Keep this concept of people ignoring alternative endings for the ending that best fits their ego in mind. It will come up later. Before we push on with the main quest, I want to mention one last quest real quick that helps us understand who the Veiled Woman truly is, our mark on this world. During this quest, we assist an Eternal that belongs to a traveling minstrel's clan to find her lover, who apparently disappeared some time ago. A few things to take away from this quest. Firstly, the lover that disappeared came to Enderal using the same vessel we were hiding in during the beginning of the story, but that vessel is now a wreck. From what it seems, the captain along with the ship were attacked by a spirit called Ia. I don't know who she is, don't ask me, but this is perhaps the most cheesable fight in the entire game. So if you have a bow and a few arrows, have at her, she's free XP. Where it gets really interesting is that when we follow the trails left behind by Tara, who is the person we're searching for by the way, we stumble upon the footsteps of a cult that apparently worships the Veiled Woman, and this cult knows everything about both her and the cycle. So due to that, I am partial to accepting them as at least a reliable source for her origins. And this is the story they have to say for the origins of both the world and the Veiled Woman.
So they went and built the golden city Kadath. Verily, it became as glorious as she foretold. Towers of gold reached high into the sky. Music resonated from every alley, and only the freshest fish, the best bread, and the finest spices filled their banquets. Decades passed, centuries, but the more time went by, the more a certain sadness took hold of the Kadathers. The meals filled their bellies, but the dining gave them no pleasure. They dressed in the noblest of garments, but they did not smile at their beauty. No, all they could think of was the hollowness of their lives. What was there to fight for if the world was free of blemish? What value had pleasure if it was there in abundance? Why live if there was no death? All of these thoughts loomed above them like a blanket of black clouds.
And so it was that she finally saw her mistake. Man was not made for eternal bliss. Only when enjoyed in brief moments would he appreciate it, contrasted with the heartaches of his brief life. And so she smote Kadath. Acid rained from the skies, winds brought plagues, and the earth itself opened and devoured the golden towers and the cities of Kadath into an abyss of fire. And it was there, on the embers of this once so glorious city, that she created the new order. She created hatred. She created pride. She gave birth to fear. She gave birth to suffering. And she created the cycle, and with it, hope. The seed had been sown.
At the last destination of this quest, she even shows up herself after Tara tries to flee from what increasingly seems like a death cult. Man, I don't know what is up with the developers of this mod, but so far I can count at least 3 death cults from the top of my head while playing this mod.
Tara!
Child.
Mistress, we...
You are afraid, are you not?
Yes.
What is it that you fear?
I don't know. Death?
You are afraid of dying. But that is not what will happen. None of you will. On the contrary. You will become part of something greater. Death is man's purpose. In the face of time, his life is but a flicker. No more than the batting of an eyelash. And his existence is pointless. Born to die, in a world revolving around the same vices, the same mistakes, the same personalities, trapped in an endless cycle. You, however, you are different. You are prepared to give your spark for something greater than yourself. You are on the verge of doing something meaningful. Something real.
Meaningful to you. We are sacrificing ourselves so that you can live.
You believe that I need your spark to exist, but you err. I do exist with or without you. And if you refuse, Tara, then this is how it shall be. You are not here because I forced your hand. You never were. You are here because, for once in your life, you want to do something with purpose. Something that matters. Your souls are too frail for peace, and stagnation poisons your minds. I am the watcher of the game. I have been for eons, since the beginning of time, when from darkness came light. I do not judge. I do not feel. I merely preserve the underpinnings of your world.
Then it will always continue like that. Eternal conflict, eternal cycles.
The prospect of this saddens you, but you misunderstand. In every desert, there's a black grain of sand among a billion others.
What do you mean?
Every battle is a new chance. Nobody knows if man will ever overcome his nature, but one day he might. But until that day arrives, she needs to do what she does, else this world would drown in chaos. And this is our purpose, Terra, don't you see? To give her a part of our essence so that she can wander this world. You can go and be yet another meaningless drop of water in the stream of existence, or you can do something that matters. The choice is yours.
At the end, Tara chooses to join them in death, and they sacrifice themselves specifically for the Veiled Woman. From a strictly metaphorical angle, this quest is supposed to be a metaphor for depression's vanity. Spending your life loving someone and being happy with them is only worse to killing yourself for an already immortal deity if you lose all sense of common rationale and give in to the darkest thoughts of your depression. In that sense, Tara didn't off herself because she loved the Veiled Woman. She barely even knew her. No, she did it because she loathed her own existence. Now, I believe that the story the cult believes in is entirely legit, and before I speak my final theory on who I think she is, I need to preface this by saying that it is never explained who she actually is, and people who have played this mod all have their own theories, and I am by no means here to override anyone's opinion. I am simply here to add my own to the pool of discussion. These quests are made to be vague on purpose, to allow this kind of interaction. If you disagree or want to add something, that will hurt me very much, but the comment section is still all yours. To me, she's an insert for either a Gnostic Archon or Yaldabaoth himself, and this quest and the way she behaves during it is shining proof of that. I am inclined to say that she matches the actions of Yaldabaoth more than those of anyone else in the Gnostic mythos. Much like him, she created a flawed universe from the beginning, which eventually had to be torn down because of how flawed it was. And ever since then, she acts as an agent in the world with the goal of redeeming her creation, but is clueless as to how to do that because she lacks the knowledge or power of the invincible spirit. In the little behavior we see of her right now, she fits him a bit too well. For example, Yaldabaoth demanded sacrifices despite having absolutely nothing to do with them because he's already mortal, just like her right now. Notice how in the very instance where she's almost deprived of a sacrifice, she shows her true colors by saying that you are finally about to do something meaningful with your life and your life is so short you might as well throw it to me instead. Also, you smell bad, here's a Chanel number 5 before you off yourself for me. And now that the chains of predestination are broken due to the events in Nehrim, she's even more of a loose cannon than ever before. Again, if you have no idea who this guy is, here's the quickest definition I can possibly find, and just take it at face value. Otherwise, you might fall into the deadly trap of thinking that making sense of all this is a good way to spend your day. It wasn't. I have seen some people say that she works with the High Ones. No. In fact, despite what will be told later on in the story, she's the person that created the emissaries with the hope of humanity eventually breaking the cycle. Or if you want to believe a more cynical theory, she wants to keep people in her creation, hence why she makes them to perpetuate it. OMG. Can you believe that this game has a main plot going on? I know, I almost forgot about it. From here on out, no more distractions. Except, you know, this and that and the others. So back to Holy Order HQ, we're being told that an army of Nehrimese ships has landed in the eastern coast of Enderal. So we, Jaspar and Constantine, have been tasked with going to Fogville, getting an orb from there that belongs to some kind of living temple, and then going to said living temple, and through it access an ancient Pyrean train station, which can take us to the coast where the Nehrimese have landed, and then spy on them using silver plates, which are essentially spying chips but magical. Bruh, have you ever heard of a Myrad with an invisibility spell on? A few interesting things happen throughout this quest. The temple is actually alive in some way. The Pyreans had some kind of ritual which allowed them to imbue souls onto objects, so this temple is technically the last Pyrean, and he is very much unhappy with this whole situation. The situation being that he is the last Pyrean. So unhappy this temple is in fact, that it turned Constantine completely insane.
This is the only way to break the cycle. One glance was enough to understand her suffering. To understand that there's no other solution than ultimate death. One day, you will understand that. You too, fleshless one. And now, we have to die. It won't change much, but maybe it will make her just a little happier.
Here we have to kill him. Much rip. I want to say this now so I won't have to circle back on this later, but technically, everything Constantine says here is completely right. When we exit the temple, we head further down, where we get this sin.
Wait, I know that smell. Stay here. Where did we find Yero's wife?
I'm sorry?
Yero's companion. Where did we find her coffin? Please, just do me a favor and answer. Just do it.
In his father's house, in the cellar. Why are you asking?
Then it really is you. Good question. Best you take a look for yourself. I'll wait here.
Keep this scene in mind for later. From here, the road to the coast is pretty simple. In the train, we have the opportunity to learn some things more about Jaspar. Turns out his father was a judge who refused to give a verdict of innocence to a nobleman who was connected to the Rhalata. The corrupt noble got away with it anyway, and then ordered the burning of his father's house, which got everyone except Jaspar and his sister crispified. This is the reason why he disregards heroism and nobleness. It ruined his family. When we reach the Nehrimese camp, we're once again approached by the High Ones. At this point, it is apparent that the High Ones are bitter, resentful entities who look down upon both humanity and the emissaries. They allow us to ask them a bunch of questions, but despite what they say, they are extremely unreliable. They tell us, for example, that the Nehrimese are here to destroy the beacon because they think the cleansing might be a good thing, which is true, but they also tell us that there are no other emissaries besides the Prophet, which is not true. And in fact, it is the case that the leader of the Nehrimese is also an emissary, and they have appeared before him too, despite saying that they haven't. When we ask them why they do all this, they simply respond with this.
We are the envoys of determination, the constant of being, before which time itself bows down.
The dream of one long dead, which is about to become reality, and that will lead you to your doom.
They also state that the beacon can indeed kill them, which is true, and that the Prophet only exists to make their job easier. Which, in a cynical way, as we'll see later, it is technically true. After we stop talking to them, we're smacked in the head by the Nehrimese and introduced to their leader, the most insufferable character to ever grace the creation engine. This guy makes Nazim look like the crown jewel of the Cloud District.
We don't follow a monarch anymore, and we do not pray to any idols, unlike people in this country.
Guys, the civil war in Nehrim is over. The Reddit army won. May the Lord have mercy. Karma is now currency. He uses the silver plates to talk to Taylor, where he proposes to him that he will not declare a war if he simply stops constructing the beacon. His philosophy, if you want to call it that, is that the High Ones are here to ascend humanity by bringing them to a higher state of being, much like natural evolution. He's also extremely prideful and quite open about the fact that he absolutely does not like religion. The irony should not be lost on anyone about the fact that the guy that preaches against religious fanaticism is also the guy that bestows irrational belief to a barely coherent set of actions which she dubs as able to transcend humanity to a higher state of being. AKA, he's just as religious as everyone else. He just called his god a different name, just like the French during the French Revolution made a religion called the Cult of Reason. This is the false prophet emissary, the anti-archetype of the regular prophet. Where we try to save humanity by looking into the future, he also tries to save humanity, but with having no clue about what he's actually doing.
Just listen to yourself, Korek. You talk like a mad prophet.
He said it! He said it! From there, Aranthiel says, Lamo, I'm not destroying the beacon. Korak throws us on a wooden raft to die. We leave anyway because this video needs to keep going for some reason, and we go back to the Sun Temple from Duneville. But before we continue, this is what happens while we're passed out on the raft. Oh no, not again.
How are you doing, silly? Still on the search?
Yes, Dad. I think I know where to find it now.
Is that so? Honestly, I find that a little hard to believe. But I guess you know what you're doing, don't you? You always did. Come on, let's go inside. I prepared a little surprise. Or should I say a big one? Look who I dug out. It's Mother and little sister. Aren't they beautiful?
Aren't we beautiful? Aren't we beautiful? Aren't we beautiful?
Why is it so hard for you to just let go? Your place is here, in the realm of the dead. So just let yourself fall. It only hurts in the beginning, you know? Then it's like falling asleep. Please, my child, we miss you so much. Little sister wants to play with you again.
Play with you. Play with
There's
you.
two of us. We could go hunting again, like back in the old days. Find ourselves a nice deer, and then have a good, juicy piece of meat for dinner. But do you even listen to me? Hey, you're not supposed to leave yet. You're already here. So why don't you just stay? Please, child, stay with us. 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 Stay with us.
Okay, maybe I need to go easier on the benzos. Back at Holy Order HQ, the mages have built a beacon, and are now in need of 3 black stones to power it. So we have to complete 3 different quests to get them, and all 3 of them are absolutely brutal, in the mental sense.
Dark and red glows the winter sky. 2 souls divided by the threads of time.
In no particular order, the first stone is in the possession of Jaspar's sister, who we found out was on a killing spree, executing everyone who she deemed as a criminal or a sinner, much like how the Butcher of Ark once did. Eventually, Jaspar confronts her as she tries to kill the noble that killed her family, and she even ends up killing Jaspar. After we deal with her though, a certain entity comes back just to bring Jaspar back.
How unexpectedly death calls us to him.
She gives a bit of a speech on how she is only doing what seems to be the best, because of how uncertain reality seems to be.
You ask if I can see more than just this branch. And the answer is yes, I can. But considering what I am, that is not much of a feat. You wonder what I am, yet your question should not be what, but where. And the answer to this is everywhere. What you see right now is merely a splinter.
So, what now? Are you here to confuse me?
You think my intention is to disconcert you, but you're wrong. I am here because you think it was I who took someone you cared for. And although you err, I do not like being seen as a destroyer. Which is why I will wipe away my debt, which was never there to begin with. Step back.
Farewell, Prophet. Maybe we will meet again. Maybe not.
Jespad is pretty hurt by this situation. We meet him again later and he's projecting all over the place, saying that he's a careless monster who only cares about himself and no one else. He gives us a backstory about how he abandoned his last lover and generally gives in to his nihilism.
Atila's dead? Fuck it! At least that means there's no one around anymore who knows what I really am.
Alicia. She was the first one. I took what I wanted from her, and when it got too tiresome, I just left her behind. Like all the others, before and after her.
That sounds exactly like what someone who cares would say. The second quest to get a black stone takes us to an abandoned castle in the middle of nowhere, where apparently a healer retrieved himself after the Order kicked him out for using unconventional methods to heal his patients. Though it was never learned why he came to such a remote area or why he brought a black stone along with him. Calia decides to join you on this adventure, sensing that this might have something to do with the thing inside her. And it does. The more we venture deeper and deeper into the castle, we find out that the healer actually went insane and killed all his workers and apprentices in his paranoid attempts to save something that was very precious to him. And that something turns out to be the corpse of his daughter who died some time ago, thus forcing him to move to a frozen castle and constantly apply different ointments on her skin just to preserve her in the hopes of eventually resurrecting her using the black stone. At some point we're ambushed by a bunch of mercenaries for the billionth time in this game, and despite the credit I have given this mod so far, I must say I absolutely hate this scene. So I will skip to the conclusion and say that the bandits are dead after Calia turned into her shadow self and killed them. We leave her to rest and move deeper into the dungeon, where we find out that the healer's attempt at resurrecting his daughter turned out to be a success. Not that he ever got to celebrate it though, as shortly after he succeeded, this bitch, she shows up and kills him. Then she gives the child the name Calia and leaves her in the nearby village. And you know the rest. This explains why Calia has the shadow following her. It's the power of the stone given onto her by her late father to bring her back to life. We have the option to tell her or not to tell her about this, but I'm gonna tell her about this. And she goes through the same existential crisis as Jespad did. But unlike him who was overcome by nihilism, she is overcome with doubt about if she will ever overcome her shadow self, or if she is even able to control it. Well, be that as it may, that's 2 black stones down from 2 different companions. But what about the third stone? The quest for the third stone is one of the best quests I have ever played. It is also severely depressing. But before I continue, I want to make a small parenthesis here and mention that the black stones seem to work much like how the Philosopher's Stone is supposed to work. They're able to transform something or someone into something else according to the will of the person that owns the stone, but at a cost. For example, they turned Jespar's sister into the judge she always wanted to be, just like her father, but at the cost of her original self. They were also able to give Calia life, but at the cost of having that shadow inside her. So with that observation in mind, let's hear the words of a bitter noble who abandoned his son because he was born severely malformed and head to a lovely village called Silver's Grove in the eastern coast of Enderal. The noble gave the child the stone because he wanted nothing to do with either it or the stone. Before we enter the village, there is the scripted scene where we pass out, so that's interesting. The village seems to be nice and beautiful, a little too nice and beautiful for Enderal standards. And apparently, the child made a full recovery from its tumors. Following his recovery, he even stumbled upon a silver ore vein, which made the village extremely prosperous. However, even from the get-go, there is something slightly off about this whole ordeal. Why did we faint when we first entered this place? And why is everyone so hospitable to a complete stranger at a time where bandits and the Red Madness are running rampant? And who even are you? Father?
I beg your pardon?
Oh, you just look like someone I knew.
Okay, that's interesting. But well, what is life but a sequence of weird coincidences?
Bro, that is the most incriminating thing you could have said. Reneu says that he will give us the stone his biological father left him with if we fulfill 3 wishes for him. First, he demands the complete extinction of all life across all multiverses. Just kidding, his first 2 wishes are to play with a bow and arrow and pick up butterflies. I cannot communicate to you how strange it feels to pick up butterflies and play catch in such a serene environment while the world around us is burning and everyone is going through a personality crisis. It feels so out of place that it actually ends up feeling kinda nice. His final wish is that
I want you to stay here.
What?
I want you to stay and be part of the family. It's just, I don't know where to start. I never wanted them to be trapped here. You have to believe me, but it was the only way to make them love me. Back then, they were always mean to me, even though I never did anything wrong. Every time Daddy took me out on the streets, they called me freak, demon, and things like that. Don't you see? Everybody hated me. They all did. And it was all just because I had those bumps on my face, and my left leg was like a big clump. Only Daddy loved me, and he took care of me.
But aren't you cured now?
No, I never was. All this here, it started when the old woman died. One day she just fell down and died as she walked past our house. Her heart stopped beating, that's what Daddy said, but all the others said it was me. That I killed the woman with wild magic because I'm a pathless demon, a freak. But that's a lie. I never wanted to hurt anyone, ever. They only said that because they hated me from the start. They came 2 days after that happened. It was already dark, and Daddy and I were asleep when all of a sudden they came into my room and tried to pull me out of my bed. I screamed and I cried, and then Daddy came and started screaming too and punched one of the men in the face. And then one of the women pulled a knife from her coat and she...
Did she kill him?
Yes. I don't think she wanted to, but she just stabbed him in his belly again and again. Suddenly, there was blood everywhere, on the floor, on my drawings, on the bed sheets, even on Thoris's basket. Then they looked at each other in a weird way and just ran. Do you understand? They just ran and left me and Daddy there. I was so afraid, brother. I was so afraid. And then the stone started speaking to me.
What did the stone tell you?
It said that it could make everything better. That I could make it so Daddy didn't die, and that all my wishes would come true. I would finally be able to walk like the others, and everyone would love me as if I were normal. I said, yes. Then everything went black and I felt a tickle in my tummy, like when Daddy used to lift me in the air to play Myrad. When I woke up again, everything was different. It was day. And my room was so beautiful and light, and there was toys everywhere, and Daddy wasn't bleeding anymore, but was sitting on my bed. And he told me that I just had a bad dream, and that I should go look in the mirror. And when I did, I saw that I looked different, like the other children, just normal. I think that the stone can make every person here in Silver Grove see the world that I want, and do what I want them to. Even before I knew it myself. At first, I was so happy, you know? Everything was so beautiful. There were date pies every night, and everyone loved me. Even the other children played with me because I didn't have the bumps anymore. I was so happy.
But you aren't happy now. Why?
Because I found out that they were only nice to me because I want them to be. And they all just do what I want them to do. All the time. When I play tag with gauges, for example, it's not really him that I'm running from. It's me. He's just like a doll, a puppet. And everyone who comes into Silver Grove becomes like that. Even if I don't want them to. But you are different. I felt it the moment Gumek let you through the gate. You see my Silver Grove, but you do what you want, not what I want.
So it seems to be the case that when we faded in Silver's Grove, our consciousness was maintained. However, our mind kept projecting a few things. Reneus then agrees to give us the stone, and then the spell collapses. And check out this atmosphere transition.
You were right, brother. We made it.
That's a bit of an overstatement. We try to get help, but are unable to.
You were right. You know, sometimes all you need to do for a wish to come true is to hold on to it long enough. Can you start us a fire now, Daddy? I'm cold. So cold.
What a quest. We are then given the option to burn his body and take the third stone. Anyway, back at Holy Order HQ, and the guy who brought the initiation ritual betrays the Holy Order and gives Korek a way to invade. Yuslan manages to set up a bunch of barriers to prevent Ark from getting overrun. We finish off the rest of the Nehrimese that made it inside the city, and Korek gives us another monologue that absolutely no one in this universe asked for.
What? Religion is a sickness, Aranthiel.
Finally, we are told that for the beacon to aim at the High Ones and kill them, it needs a Numenos, and we have absolutely no idea how to find that. After these events conclude, we are told to go and rest, and during our sleep, we get our final dream session. What follows is domestic abuse. So I will summarize by saying that the story of the Prophet's family is that his father was slowly driven into insecurity and schizophrenia after his wife got pregnant for the third time. This led to him developing the Red Madness, and then the masked man from the temple, aka the Black Libra, showed up and killed his entire family and blamed it on him. But I wonder if their goal was to kill the Prophet, in which case this was a failed operation, or if their actual target was the third child. Or maybe it could be both. The fact is, the Prophet lives, and then they infiltrate a ship to Enderal. And from there, you know the rest. It is a shock to me that we have made it so far into the video without talking about the best character in the game. Kermai
Kazor Tatakajabe.
This guy, nay, this beautiful starling, is in a quest for the mother of all avian life. Eggs. First from outside Ark, and then from all over the map. If you don't help him, you're officially a bad person. Some people want palaces. Other people want a fat bank account. My boy here just needs eggs, and you can't even give him that. I say he only needs eggs, but in reality he wants to use said eggs to make an airship to go to the Star City to meet his ancestors. The Order is willing to help him because it might give them a clue about where to find a Numenos, so we find a bunch of other materials for him that aren't just eggs, and we're ready to fly along with him, Jaspar, Calia, and someone's grandma. We spend the night in the airship and we get a bunch of romance options. Throughout my whole life, I have been very inconsistent on many opinions, which, despite what the internet might tell you, is a good thing. If you have the same ideas you had as a child as an adult, you are basically still a child in a slightly bigger flesh suit. That being said, I am happy to report that I still believe that romancing NPCs in a video game is utter cringe. Unless it's a parody game or somehow essential to the plot, I am just not interested. On the bright side, both Calia and Jaspar got out of the personality crisis as much better people, with Jaspar finally realizing that caring for someone and having a higher ideal doesn't automatically make you weak, and Calia figuring out that she's both better and able to control her shadow. Happy endings all around. Kermai, however, is about to not get a good ending. If you remember during the timeline section, the Starlings are inventors who create new mechanisms to go back to their lost homeland, the Star City. They have no memory about how that place looks or how they even ended up in comets falling away from that place, but when we arrive there, it does look beautiful. It is also completely deserted.
Father Uralai, Father Jotanax, Father Rajimon, he is here, and he has found you, just as your prophecy foretold. Now open the gates! Why don't you answer? Open the gates!
Oh my. I sense drama.
By the stars! Why do you punish him with silence? He found you. He fulfilled your prophecy. So let him inside. No. No, 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 no! This isn't happening! This isn't happening!
In order to not circle back on this later, I will say what happened to the Star City right now. So the Starlings avoided the cleansing and the cycle by using their advanced technology, and they made a city in the skies. From there, they observed the cycle for eon after eon, but much like the Aged Man, they couldn't find a way to stop it. Yet in time, they too started getting weaker and weaker. The Star City had its limitations, and new space was hard to find, which is why new laws were implemented that condemned lawbreakers to having their memories wiped and being thrown down in the world of Ven on one of these things, which kinda looks like a comment if you really squint your eyes. However, the rules were so strict and the time they had to be upheld was so indefinite that even if you had a 0.0001% chance of not breaking them, given enough time, everyone broke them. And so the last Starlings were left isolated in a no longer functioning city. So they too left. This story kind of feels like a callback to the story of Golden Kadath. The beings that were created by the Veiled Woman were not fit for the world she created. This state can only be overcome if humanity transcends beyond its current confines, and in the process, break the cycle created by the Veiled Woman. During our exploration, we also also find out that the High Ones are essentially collective manifestations of the minds of the people of a civilization that got cleansed at the end of every cycle. Okay, so far I have dodged the obvious question long enough. What exactly is a High One? Well, according to the main writer for this mod, the High Ones were always supposed to be a metaphor for the frailty of conscious existence. Here is the entire post if you want to have a read, but I also want to try and give them another interpretation. You may have heard of Jung Melchizedek's theory before, probably from the Tool song 46 and 2. Damn, you know we're about to talk about something late when we're out here referencing Tool songs. Essentially, he theorized that different human civilizations have different compositions of chromosomes. A composition of 42 and 2 refers to united consciousnesses that do not see anything outside themselves as being separated from themselves. For them, there is only one energy, one life, one being. Theirs. These to me obviously sound like the High Ones. They are a degeneration of humanity. There is never a High One that is different than the others. There is never one that speaks differently or walks alone. The High Ones are united both amongst themselves, courtesy of them being identical in thought and in action, and each High One is composed of a unity of people that cannot ascend beyond 44 and 2, which is our chromosomal composition. This composition is described as disharmonic consciousness, and is the product of humans being too separate from each other, yet also still connected to each other due to their common humanity, but nothing else. This, from what it seems, is what causes the cycle, and the only way to advance this disharmonic state and go one step further is by becoming 46 and 2. Jung hypothesized that in order for humanity to be able to maintain itself, it will have to reach this state while progressing technologically and spiritually. In that state, a human maintains individual consciousness, but confined in a form of collective, united consciousness. When we talk to the High Ones, their root demeanor towards humanity points to that selfish egocentrism of theirs. We are part of one consciousness, and we just haven't come around yet. But we will with the cleansing.
Now, do you think it's possible that the highest development of man may be to submerge his own individuality in a kind of collective consciousness?
That's hardly possible. I think there will be a reaction. A reaction will set in against this communal dissociation. You know, when I think of my patients, they all seek their own existence, and to assure their existence against that complete atomization into nothingness or into meaninglessness. Man cannot stand a meaningless life.
Another theory just to wrap things up on the theory field. Have you ever looked at the night sky with a sense of confusion and wondered, meh, where the hell is everyone, meh? According to one scenario proposed by the Fermi paradox, which is the paradox that seeks to answer why despite the age of our universe there have been no other species traveling the galaxies yet, there are certain filters preventing civilizations from advancing beyond a point. And if those filters, be they technological or social, are not overcome, the civilization is doomed. After one point, technological advancements happen rapidly, but the rate of a species to adapt and mentally grow in order to control said advancements and say, not blow up the world, remains at a slow and steady pace. The beacon can indeed save us, but can the people utilize it? Get my point? Okay, let's wrap the story up. Kurma has an existential crisis while realizing that his utopia was for naught. He activates the security mechanisms of the Star City, gets himself and someone's grandma killed, but we manage to escape using the launching pods alongside Calia and Jaspar, with the location for the Numinous, which, as it turns out, is in the capital city of the ancient Pyreans who last tried to activate the beacon, and that city, as it also turns out, is right beneath Ark. Pretty convenient, considering that someone betrayed us for the second time and opened the door for Korak and his army to get in. And thus, we, Yuslan, Tielor, and our companion of choice have to travel to the City of 1,000 Floods and find the Numinous, while the rest of the team tries to buy us time. Interception. There are two side quests that are worth mentioning before we talk about the events that transpire in that city. Remember that key from Yero's locker that we have been holding on to since the beginning of the mod? Well, in a corner just further down the road from the Sun Temple to your right, you can find Yero's hideout. Turns out he was experimenting with a substance known as the Dreamflower. The assumption that the Dreamflower has such a drastic effect on the physique of a human is a misconception in my opinion. There is no alchemical explanation for that. Instead, I think it changes the connection of an Arcanist to the Sea of Eventualities in such a way that it allows the user to jump from one thread of reality to another, always to that which yields the best outcome for the user at any given moment. Further research is needed, but I can see potential, and so the Aliani, the natives of Arazil, reserve the honor of the Dreamflower for their best warrior, mashed and mixed with the blood of a human heart, usually taken from one of their enemies, a soul gem and a bit of Glimmer Cup dust. It becomes a potion which was given to the warrior in a ceremony. according to the myths, with an unbelievable effect. Not only did the potion instantly recover the health of a person, it even gave a blessing which was supposed to allow the user to lead a happy and fulfilled life until they died. While this seems to be superstition, there seems to be some level of truth to it. Archaeological findings showed that there were some warriors of the Aliani tribe who had high vitality even at an old age. That the Dreamflower cannot be found in Enderal anymore is regrettable. Its alchemical value appears to be tremendous. So there's a potion out there that allows us to jump from one eventuality to another. But how exactly do we access this Dreamflower? In the quest that drop in an ocean, Yuslan needs the help of the prophet to open up a portal to another eventuality so he can say goodbye to his long dead family. Guess what flower you can find in that reality. Other than that, this is a pretty sad quest. He's even convinced to stay there and die as the alternative reality crashes in on him, and he only comes back because of us. When we do come back, he notices the Dreamflowers we picked up, and he has this to say.
Alright, listen, that's a bad idea. The Dreamflower is dangerous. Extremely dangerous.
Why? Isn't it supposed to make you more powerful?
No. That is, yes, it makes one powerful, but you must understand the reason why. The Dreamflower, I studied it for a long time, and by now I believe I understand how it functions. It takes over your spirit from the moment you drink it.
Take over your spirit?
Yes. Ibn Nehrimese and the Calian's alchemist, whose writings you've probably read. They are both wrong. Yes, the Dreamflower improves your arcane skills, but it neither makes you immortal, nor does it allow you to seamlessly jump between realities. Instead, it puts you into an eternal slumber. Do you understand? From the moment you drink it, you're asleep, trapped in a dream where things always go the way you want them to. An Elysium.
I will come back to this detail soon. Fun fact, the Dreamflower can only be brewed inside the father's laboratory, meaning that to access it, you have to complete 3 different activities and the main quest before you can access this potion. Anyway, back to the City of 1,000 Floods. During their journey throughout the city, the High Ones keep taunting Aranthiel about his inability to control his son and condemning him from the beginning by not accepting him after he got the Lightborn Irlanda pregnant. We also learned that, despite everything we did so far, and despite the fact that predestination is no longer a thing, everything is still playing out in the exact same way as it did in any other cycle before us. Then there are a few fights, the ceiling comes crashing down, and we are then separated from a companion. And it is only the player, Yuslan, and Tielor before the Numinos, in front of the previous beacon. The Numinos, as it turns out, is the mind of a High One, and we can trap it using the Word of the Dead. But then, as we enter the mind of the last High One to trap it, this happens.
Tell me, Aranthiel, back in the ruins, when the High One showed you that memory, it was the first time I saw you express real agitation. Not anger, but agitation. What you did to your son, do you regret it, I wonder? That you abandoned him in exchange for prestige and power?
What?
I don't think you do. What got to you was being reminded of your own failure. Regret? You don't know that feeling. You never have. Not even after Kira.
Child, what are you?
I hired the mercenaries with Khalim. I helped him kill Lashari. And I let the Nehrimese into the city. And still, you don't have the slightest idea who I am, do you?
Why, you were there. The night of 1,000 fires.
Yes, I survived your massacre, one of only a few.
Then you did not follow my son because you shared his ideals. You did it to get to me. What for, Yuslan? Justice?
Justice. I am done with this world, Aranthiel. I have been for a long time now. The only reason why I'm still here is a promise I made to someone. The promise that one day, I will be the one who takes everything from you.
Yuslan, this is madness. Whatever you are planning to do, it will affect the whole world, not just me. If you want my death, why not just wait, damn it? Once we have lit the beacon, Korek will kill me. That way, all those innocent lives will be...
Just shut up! You take me for such a fool? As if there's anything in this world you would want more than to die a martyr! Tielor Aranthiel, conqueror of the High One, savior of mankind. You like the sound of that, don't you? You like it so much.
You know, at first, I was so frustrated with all the setbacks. When the Prophet saved Lishari's research in Aldrashengrad, and when Quarek's first attack on the city didn't succeed. But then I realized that all of this would be so much more gratifying than anything else I could do to you. Your final attempt, and so close to your target, only to fail by my hand. You asked me once what my daughter's name was. Do you remember?
Ilsa, I beg you, please.
Lena. Her name was Lena.
No. That's impossible.
Yuslan is the false emperor, the antithesis of Tielor Aranthiel. You see, when Tielor still saw the Lightborn, he once did a bit of a blunder and got a bunch of innocent people killed, including Yuslan and his family, but he rose again, just to get revenge. He is the product of all that Tielor has tried never again to be, and here he gets his way of forever depriving Tielor of his opportunity to become the hero he always wanted to be. So we exit the memory, and Tielor comes up with the amazing idea of activating the beacon without the Numinous. Genius! This, as we find out, is what actually commences the cleansing and gives rise to the High One. But this time, it just might be different. The Veiled Woman shows up and heals us.
It all begins with the dreams. Breathe.
And then she opens up a portal to an unknown location. See, time and time again in this mod, the people keep referring to a frozen Goliath that is stuck deep below the surface.
The people down here call it the Weeping Tree. They believe that the Black Guardian, once a year, fulfills one of the wishes they write onto these notes.
It's a nice little urban legend, just like the Royal Family, the Eastern Bunny, and Dreamable.
I'm at the blow.
Do something, damn it!
But unlike these clearly fictitious myths, this one actually turns out to be real. And as cool as this might seem, this is also the most boring exposition dummy in the entire game. I already explained most of the things he has to say, so I'm gonna cut it short by saying that he once tried to create a Goliath to live through the cycle and guide the next generation of humanity to overcome it. But much like the ancient man before him, he also failed. But this time, because he didn't have enough time to finish his creation. He also mentions that the emissaries are not the same people as the people they once were before they became emissaries. Tielor, Korak, Yuslan, and the player have all died and risen up by the Veiled Woman as idealized versions of their previous forms, holding on to their final dream, which is why Dad, Aixon, and the Aged Man all call us dead and fleshless. That's what we are. The corpses we found outside the temple do in fact belong to our previous self and our friend. The Black Guardian says that it's the High Ones that make the emissaries. No, it's her. This guy is pretty unreliable. I say that because he also says that we're the first fleshless to ever become aware of the fact that we are fleshless. But we know that that's not the case because of the Aged Man. If you need even more proof that this guy is, at the very least, unreliable, then here's this.
You could be a god to them. You could guide their ascent. You could shape a mankind free of egos and weaknesses. And by doing so, you would deprive the High Ones of their power. Just imagine, in this new world, there would be no need for a beacon, because the High Ones simply would not have any strings to pull on. Mankind will defeat them by becoming superior.
You can't force insight on people. It has never worked, and it never will.
At the end of our talk, he recommends that we should let the cleansing happen and become the gods of the next humanity so we can stop the High Ones once and for all. For several reasons which we have already gone through, this is a stupid idea. So he tricks us into switching places with him so we get trapped in the frozen Goliath and just so he can go out and attempt to guide humanity to get over the cycle. This section, I have noticed, requires a lot of suspension of disbelief. Why does he have a switch me button in the middle of the facility? And why did he install flesh puppet chambers in said facility? Who was he planning to fight? Anyway, Jasper shows up, stops us from switching places, and helps us fight him. And then we both get out alive. Endings time!
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Here we have two options. We either break the beacon to stop the cleansing before it runs its course and tell Jasper to leave and warn the other nations that they have to construct the beacon to kill the High Ones. Enderal will still be destroyed, but the rest of humanity may be spared. If you go with that ending, the game closes with a dream back at our old home.
A great philosopher once said that every change begins with a moment of lucidity. In these moments, a veil opens, One which normally shrouds all the unwelcome truths we are aware of, but which we have buried deep within ourselves, where we cannot see them. And it is only these moments in which we can make a decision. The decision to either act or to let the moment pass, until the veil seals itself again and we once more are the slaves of our habits. I don't believe in revolutions. They're too simple, too fiery, and they too often end with the opposite result of what was intended. But neither am I a cynic who has lost all of his faith in the world. Change is possible, but it won't come as a big bang, but rather as a long path, one that will constantly confront us with obstacles. Obstacles we can either choose to overcome, or at which we can choose to quietly turn around and go back to being what we were. The sacrifice of the one who will be remembered as the prophet is proof that I am right. Yes, some might see the downfall of Enderal as the triumph of the High Ones, but it wasn't. It was neither that nor a triumph for mankind. What we were granted was a moment of lucidity, the chance to start our own walk down a long, rocky path. The High Ones exist because we believe in them. We, our egos, give them their power, and the more we listen to their words, the more we hate them, and the more powerful they become. Indeed, the beacon, this ancient machine of unknown origin, can destroy us, but it can also free us from the High Ones, if we use it right. Rumors that the Arizalians have started constructing a second beacon, and the knowledge that this time we are aware of its nature, give me hope that the prophet has not died in vain, and that we continue walking.
If we go with the other ending, we escape with Jaspar back to the Star City. Jaspar is not fleshless like us, so he's probably going to either die before we make it to the next cycle, or end up like the woman in the water. And given the attempts of all the other people to change humanity's fate so far and warn them about the cycle, I say we're just gonna end up like the aged man.
Now it's up to us.
But what happens when you drink the Dreamflower potion and then break the stones? If we do that, we're saved by a companion who finds us unconscious right before we die and brings us safely back to Kira, and then we get an achievement called What is Reality Anyway? So I dare ask the question, is this final, seemingly best ending legit? I believe yes. We have seen time and time again in this story, people not accepting the reality of their situations, basically because they have been consumed by their own ego. We saw it with Thariel killing his friend, we saw it with the father ignoring the signs that Thariel was gonna betray him, and we saw it with people going through hard times and not accepting that things could have been better for them. And one of those people, I believe, was Yuslan. This makes complete sense given that this isn't the real Yuslan, rather he's a fleshless version of the real Yuslan who wants to fulfill the last dream of his real self. And that dream was to get back at Taylor for killing his family. I think that he simply did not want to believe that things could have been better for him, and that Yero was the one who got it right. This final ending is legit, and thus, the mod ends. First of all, if you stuck around this long, I wanna say thank you. This video has been in the making for a really long time, because I wanted to do this more justice. That being said, now that I'm done, I'm not even sure if that is even possible. Yeah, some commentaries are better than others, but with the amount of stuff left vague or unanswered, I wouldn't be surprised if people in the comment section started telling their own spins on the plot, and those spins having little to no resemblance to mine. I hope that the whole trying to explain the real life references behind this mod didn't come off as pretentious or unwarranted. I tried as best as I can to make them digestible to someone who's never heard of these concepts before, and then link them back to the mod story. Some are more obvious than others, like the Carl Jung influences and archetypes. Others, like the Gnostic influences, I feel are more subtle and therefore debatable. But others, like the Fermi Paradox and 46 and 2, are kinda reaching, but I felt like they fed really well as theories for the plot, and thus I should at least mention them. Anyway, I hereby officially announce that this is the end of even slightly thoughtful videos. I am sick and tired of contracting food poisoning to make a video, whilst I could be getting triple the views for less than a tenth of the effort just for watching TikToks instead. I am no longer here to debate whether this world is fair or or not, the answer to that question is obvious. I am just here to ride the next trend all the way to the bank and cash out my chips before my fleshly husk abandons me. In a less cynical note, I feel like the comment section of this video will be very interesting. Let's continue the philosophy club discussion down there. And with all that said, once again, thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.
What are you... Farther down, yeah. It belonged to an old landlord. When Adila and I came here, we always made sure the gate stayed shut. But someone must have opened it. Or